Hello, good evening, students. Welcome to Byju's. Welcome to another session of weekly current affairs. Once again, I'm very glad to be meeting all of you. I can see all of you joining in. So, without much delay, let's just dive into the session now. Before I go into the topics, I just want to ask you all, how are you all finding the BEP app at this point? It's been quite few weeks right now, and I'm just hoping you all are getting used to it. What is your response here? Can see a lot of thumbs up coming. So yes, I am going to safely assume that you are all enjoying this new transition which is there. Now coming into the fact that, see, for those who are still getting a grip on this, like, okay, why are we having this, or what is the point of having this? The idea is, you need, when you have your preparation, you already have to spend a lot of time on your studies, on your timetable, on your answer writing practice, on getting the review of that, and so on. So at this point, you don't have the time to sit and search for all the material in different places. And there enters the importance of your BEP app. So BEP app is basically a one-stop solution to finding all the content that you need at one single point. So you have your live classes, your recorded classes, your current affairs, which is there, the webinars, which are there, the test series, which is there, everything at one point. So you don't have to waste your very valuable time searching for different things. Okay. Now those who are getting, just started on the idea of this, see, you basically have, when you get into the BEP app, you can enter it through your mobile number or the registered email ID, which is there. Once you enter over here, then you can get into the section and you will see a category called as IAS. So you click on IAS, and then once you go further, you will see IAS English, IAS Hindi. So you will see two specific categories like that. So you choose the category which is applicable for you and you enter that. Once you enter that, based on what program you've enrolled for, if it's the tablet learning program, you will see a screen like this. And if it's the online classroom program or the BHLP program which you've enrolled for, you will see a screen like this. If it's the tablet learning program, you have to go to the home section over here to find what all are the important videos that are listed for you, and you can watch it. For the students who've enrolled for the BHLP program, you have something called as the My Classroom over here. Click on that and that will take you to the live classes that are available for you. Now, whatever program or whichever program you've joined for, the idea is your study material, your unit tests, your webinars, your async videos, whatever is recorded videos, all of it will be on this app. Okay, so it's like a one-stop solution. Now, enough about the app. As always, I promise to my dear students, I'm again here with a bunch of quite interesting topics that we will also be having like some sort of a discussion about, because I'm very interested to know what your opinions are on certain topics that I have taken up over here. If you look at the list of the topics, the first topic is compulsory voting. For a lot of us, this is going to be a very new idea. Okay, so you've heard about voting. Now there's compulsory voting, and I'm sure by the time you reach to your prelims examination, there would be some more improvements on this topic, which will make, I wouldn't say the topic as it is important, but the polity behind it important. What is the polity? What is the theory behind it? This is what we will be discussing in this topic. Next thing comes the India-Bangladesh River Agreement. Now, again, we know how UPSC has a huge soft corner for rivers and their tributaries and everything, especially when it is the rivers from the northeastern side. These are a fodder for UPSC questions. So, India-Bangladesh River Agreement needs to be studied both from a mains perspective and from a very core prelims perspective also. So, that is also something very interesting. Third topic which is there is the Personal Data Protection Bill, and this bill has now been withdrawn. And look at the name of the bill. This bill was otherwise called as the Privacy Bill. This bill has now been withdrawn, and we have to get to the crux of why this was withdrawn, what was its problem, and how can we improve it further, and why is there a bill in the first place about the personal data? So all that we'll be discussing in that third topic. The fourth topic is about, again, you have constantly, after corona has happened, we are constantly on the lookout for important diseases, both from a health perspective, because we have to take care of our health, and from the perspective of the fact that, okay, this might come as a UPSC question. What I've done for that fourth topic is quite interesting. I'll tell you guys. What I've taken is, I will be discussing the diseases, but then I've just projected as to what all UPSC questions could come from it. And we'll be discussing those fourth topic in a pure prelims oriented manner. The fifth topic, again, is a science and tech topic, which is small satellite launch vehicle. I know some of you are like, oh, no science and tech topic. But then I promise you, we'll make it simple. We'll study it in a very good manner in that fifth topic. So now I don't want to keep you guys waiting. Let's start the class. First topic is compulsory voting. Now, the context of this idea is the fact that very recently, the Union Minister of State of Law and Justice has said that voting is a right, not a duty. And the idea of compulsory voting is against the principle of democracy. So this was told in the parliament. Now, we have to get to the crux. Why are we even discussing about compulsory voting? First, let's get to the right to vote in India. We all know that. Now, before I go into the topic, I just want to know how many of you who've reached the voting age and have voted in elections. Can I see a show of hands? Okay, a lot of you. I can see a lot of you. Now, the more interesting question. How many of you have reached the voting age, got an opportunity to vote, that means your name was there in the electoral roll, and still haven't voted? You can be frank, you can be honest. I will not judge you for it. Not voted it. I can see. Always, there are people who said, no, we have always voted. Yes, Swati, I see your response. Reached the voting but has not voted. Okay, fine. I see quite responses also. Now, we are given the right to vote in India. Right to vote basically means that this is something that we have pictured India as a democracy. And one of the cornerstones of democracy, or one of the major points of democracy, is that you have to elect your representatives. And not just any election. You cannot just elect at the gunpoint or anything. You have to elect your representatives in a very fair and free and impartial manner. Then only it becomes true democracy. Okay, so when our constitution was made, and obviously, when we sat to make our constitution, there were lawyers, there were a lot of constitution experts on the table. They said that, see, we want a democracy in India where everyone feels free to vote. Okay, it shouldn't be told, okay, you have to vote and that is why it is there, because then the idea of actual democracy itself gets diluted. So they wanted it to be free. And that is why people were given the right to vote. Now, this right to vote is actually a previous UPSC question. That right to vote, what kind of right it is? Is it a fundamental right? Is right to vote a fundamental right, guys? Let's see how many of you feel that way. No. Right to vote is not a fundamental right. Those who have started off your polity know that some rights that we have are fundamental rights, which means that the way it is enforced, the strictness with which it is enforced is quite high. Right to vote is basically, you can call it a constitutional right. Okay, a constitutional right basically means it is mentioned in the constitution. It is mentioned in the constitution because it was told in a separate law, that is your Representation of Peoples Act 1951, that you have to create a right like that so that people feel like, okay, this is a democracy. We have, as people in a democracy, we have the right to vote. Okay, so the right to vote in India is provided by the Constitution of India and by the Representation of Peoples Act 1951, which means when Representation of Peoples Act came about, they put an article into the Constitution, that was Article 326. And Article 326 guaranteed the right to vote to every citizen above the age of 18. Be it any religion, caste, gender, whatever you are, if you've crossed 18, you have the right to vote. Okay. Now coming to a very important question here. You all know we have other rights also. We have the right to speech, right to expression. So right to vote is also given to us. Apart from that, you normally hear constitution makers and you hear political people saying that, see, you all have to come and vote because as a citizen, it is also your duty. If you want to see India as a proper democracy, which is there, you will have to ensure that it happens through voting. Enter this new idea of, I wouldn't say new idea, it has already been there. It's in some countries they're still practicing it. It is the idea of compulsory voting. The idea of compulsory voting is, no matter what, if you have attained the voting age, you have to vote. You have to compulsorily vote. Now, on the outset of it, you've just heard a little bit fact about it. Now, one more thing is that if you don't vote, what is going to happen is someone will come and give you a penalty also. Just like if you park in an area which is having some kind of a no parking sign, someone will come and give you a fine. Or on the day of the election, if you don't vote, they will be like, okay, please pay a fine of so and so because you have not voted. How many of you feel this is all right? This should be there. Mixed opinion. A lot of you are mixed. This is exactly the thing. When we discuss this, so we'll discuss this in detail and I'll ask you this question again at the end. So by then, maybe you will have a much more better opinion formed in your mind. Okay. So yeah, so a lot of people are saying, no, this should not be there, should not be there. Okay. Now let's get into the crux of it. As in why are we even dabbling with this idea at this point? Now, initially, when the constitution was made in 1951, after the constitution was put into practice, and they were trying to make the People's Representation Bill, when one of the members said, see, in India, we should make voting mandatory. Then only people will come and place their vote. If you don't penalize them, they will not come. They will not have any fear. They'll be like, okay, fine, voting, no voting. What is the big deal? So some members said, you please make voting mandatory. But then at that point, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was, see, we cannot make voting mandatory in India. Why do you think he said that? See, and you have to imagine, this is the time when India was in your condition, we got our independence, we're going through partition, people are suffering, there is so much of violence happening, there are a lot of things happening. And at this point, somebody is saying you have to make voting mandatory. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar rejected the idea. It's not practical. How can you make voting mandatory in a country that is still getting the hold of what this idea of democracy is? We were being colonized for so long. We do not know the idea of voting. The time that people become even aware of voting, it will take another 5 to 10 years. So if you make voting mandatory and you penalize the people who are not voting, you are in turn going to add misery to already the problems that they are having. So when it comes over here, what happens is that when you make voting mandatory, this people who are already suffering from the partition and everything, they feel that, okay, they are not treated well by the rulers who are there. So this first idea was rejected on the account of practical difficulties. Apart from that, the women, the older people who are not able to come out and vote, how will you keep penalizing all of them? So there were a lot of practical difficulties because of that. Then came to the idea as we left it out. We didn't think about it much. Then what started happening is all around India, the voter turnout started becoming less. Elections were happening. People were not coming enough to vote. Be it the state elections or the central level elections, people were not coming out to vote. And on the overall itself, people started feeling like, okay, even the new generation which is there, they were like, why I am politically neutral? I don't want to vote. So this started becoming a concern. Just imagine in the course of time, everybody is feeling like, why we should vote? There's no point. Let's not vote. If that becomes the condition, then this entire idea of democracy which rests on the idea that you should have elections which are free and impartial and fair, you are losing that idea. Democracy will not be put into action, right? You will have a government where some people will have voted and they have come into power, because other people are like, why we are not coming to vote? It is in this context there was a compulsory voting bill that came about in 2004. And the compulsory voting bill, they again said, let's make voting compulsory for very exceptional cases, like women, in the case of senior citizens, people who are sick, people who are having some daily wage earners. For example, if there's a migrant worker who is in, his voting card would be, or his electoral roll is based in Bihar, but he's working in Maharashtra, then it will take him an entire one day to go over there, vote, come back over there. In all the time, if he's a daily wage earner, he is basically losing out on his wage. So the question is, do I preserve democracy or do I preserve my family with the money that I'm getting? So obviously they would choose for the family point. So again, in these exceptional cases, let's exempt them, but let's keep the idea of compulsory voting. Again, at that point, when the bill was brought to discussion, the people in the parliament, there was widespread debate. They were like, no, we are not placing it. We are not going for it. Again, they cited practical difficulties. They also felt, if you do this, you are not strengthening democracy, you are somehow weakening democracy. Why so? Because democracy is not someone coming and telling you, if you don't do this, you will be punished. Where is the freedom in that? Where are you being very free and impartial in that? If someone is coming and telling you, if you don't do this, you will be penalized, you will do it out of fear anyway. Or because if you don't have the money to pay for the fine, you will go and do it. But then how involved are you in the process? You will go and you will be like, okay, fine, one vote, done. Now you will not penalize me. So the idea is, you're not strengthening democracy. In turn, you are letting democracy to be made like a mockery, because everyone would come and do whatever they want and they'll go. Some of them will click on candidates they're not interested. Some of them will be like, okay, now you made me vote, so I'll show what you can do, what I can do. And they'll put some other vote, which is like some independent candidate who has no chance of winning. So the entire idea of election itself would be lost. You are not going to find a proper candidate who will win. So again, in 2004, they said, no, let's not have this. That did not stop. Time and again, private members have brought this compulsory voting bill. And again, in 2009, they brought it up. And they again said, let's make voting mandatory. And let's also do one thing. Let's ensure that, because see, you are making voting mandatory, and in one entire district, you're putting 2 or 3 polling booths. So people who are coming over there also, they will not be able to place their vote properly. That is the first thing. Second thing itself, some people will be like, okay, it's too much of a crowd over there, I'm not going to go. Maybe it's not even accessible to the people. So at what points over here, they have said that you tell the state to ensure polling booths everywhere, so that everywhere they can go and easily vote also. You also make special arrangements for senior citizens, people with physical disability, and a pregnant, and those who are pregnant and those who are sick and everyone, so that they also can, they are transported and they are voted. They can place their vote. Now the question is, how many of you think this is very practical in India? Let alone the idea of compulsory voting should be there or not. I'm asking, how many of you think it's a practical idea in India? It's not practical. It is not practical. Why? Because India it's not at the size of a very small country. It's a very large country. When the duty of the state becomes that you have to transport every other person who has some kind of a condition to the polling booth, how much of infrastructure, how much of money, and how much of human resources will have to be spent on doing all this? Already the election of India is like a grand festival. Okay, it has so much of money involved in it, be it the election campaigning, the conducting of elections, and so on. Adding to that, if this is becoming some kind of a compulsory thing, you will have to find extra money for the infrastructure. And then again, what they did, they said, no, let's not have this. In between this, one state in India decided, okay, let's just try it out once. So what happened is, in Gujarat assembly elections, they enforced compulsory voting once. But at that point, it was taken to the High Court, and the High Court said, no, you cannot enforce compulsory voting. Now we come into the arguments for this. Though there are a lot of people who feel there should be compulsory voting. So first, let's go into the arguments for, that is, supporting compulsory voting. First thing they feel is that if you make voting compulsory, you are going to have more people turning out for the elections. You will be having more people coming out for the elections. So this is actually a good thing, because more people will come out. Now the question is, in those countries, now worldwide, if you look, some prominent countries which have taken compulsory voting is, you have Australia, you have Belgium, you have country called Luxembourg, or Luxembourg, anyway you can pronounce it. Now in all these places, they've tried it out, and they have seen that the voter turnout is high. Almost 90% of them turn out for these elections. Obviously, when you tell them like you have to come for the election, otherwise you will be penalized, they will obviously turn out. But these are some countries which were there, and they have implemented compulsory voting. Now, a lot of countries, other countries like Brazil, there was a lot of other countries, they tried implementing compulsory voting and they failed, because these were all developing countries, and they could not ensure that everyone is actually facilitated to come to the polling booth and vote. So we are on par with these developing countries. We will also have a problem like that. But then the argument raised is that, see, somehow if you have higher voting, you will have, or you put compulsory voting, there will be a higher voter turnout. And in turn, when you have a higher voter turnout, it will actually have stronger participation. People will be interested. They feel people will be interested in what happens after the election. How many of you, like, we all are in that age group of maybe 20, or I know there would be younger students also, but then most of you are what we could call as youth. How many of you can actively say that, yeah, I follow the politics? When I'm saying politics, not the fighting and all that, the idea that what is happening in the country. We all do it because we are civil service aspirants, but then we might not, or you would see a lot of your friends who are not even bothered about the politics. So what happens is, when you make someone compulsorily vote, the idea is they will somehow be interested. Okay, I have placed a vote. You guys have made me vote. So let me know what you're doing after winning the elections. So somehow it will increase the participation, is what people feel. So this will lead to an active citizenry. Active citizenry means that if somebody who's voted and you've put them into power and they are not doing well, you will be raising questions against it. Somehow, the people who support this argument of compulsory voting feel that when you make voting compulsory, people will be more involved in the democracy, and people being more involved in the democracy will lead to discussions and debates and everything. Which means, if I have placed my vote and tomorrow they're going to pass an Aadhaar bill, I would be obviously concerned about it. So I will be part of them, what kind of debates and discussions and everything that happens. If the government is asking an opinion from the citizens, I will be placing my opinion. You all know that, no? The government, whenever there's a bill coming about, at very crucial bills, the government puts it on the public forum, asking what is your opinion on this. Right now, none of us care about it. Nobody even checks it out. But if you are made to compulsory vote, you will be like, okay, now let's see what I can also ask them. This is my right. I will ask them about this. So active citizenry will happen. Then comes the question of democratic right and duty. As citizens of a country, it is our responsibility that we have to somehow further the idea or the ideology that is there. Because if you don't further democracy, or you don't support democracy, in the course of time, democracy will die off, and we will have some kind of a government which we are not interested in. For example, maybe an authoritarian government. So we cannot allow democracy to die out. And because of this itself, if the voter turnout is also less, this might happen. That is why, as a matter of democratic right and duty, you need compulsory voting. Then coming into inclusive democracy. See, I told you earlier, Indian democracy and Indian elections is like a grand festival. But even in this grand festival, some people are not having the entire courage to come out and vote. There are several places in India where if you belong to certain castes or groups, you are neglected in the process of the election campaigning because they are not an effective. You cannot, for example, see, there are certain clusters called as vote banks in every place. What are vote banks? It's not vote bank as it is. The idea that you have certain places, you go, for example, you must have seen every time when there is an election in your area and all, they would come and repair the roads, repair the bridges. They'll be like, all good, everything going nice. They will come and ask you. Now, they must have come after 5 years to you. You must have elected them after 5 years. They're coming and asking you this. But that is because you are a vote bank. They know you are the group of, or maybe the middle class people or whoever is there. They will go and vote. So you do something for them, they will vote, and you can get back into power. Those people where you can try to extract votes, these are called as vote banks. Now, there are several communities in India which are year after year neglected by politicians because, for example, you are in some, for example, you belong to a tribal community, you are not aware of all these processes which is there, you are not seeing any benefits that the state is giving out. So will the politician go and be like, you please vote for me? The people will be like, why, who are you, why should we even vote for you? What is this idea of vote? Because there are places where that awareness is also not there. So politicians are like, no, leave it, we are not going to waste our time talking to them and all, let's just try to talk to the vote banks. Now, when this voting is made compulsory, everybody has to go and vote, which means this idea of vote bank, or some people we can have more votes from them, not when I'm saying more votes, some people, if you do something for them, they will go and vote. Some people you don't have to bother about them. This idea will change because there's no vote bank. Everybody has to go and vote. Everybody has to go and vote, otherwise they will be penalized. So the politicians also will stop playing their small petty politics. Petty means silly politics, and they will try to cater to every other group in the community. So now, are you starting to slowly be the idea like, yeah, maybe compulsory voting is actually good also? So this will lead to an inclusive democracy. What is inclusive? Every other section of of the society which is there, they are included in the democratic process. Right now, our democracy is not inclusive. In the first place, the voter turnout will be 60 to 70%. 60 to 70% will be the people who can access a polling booth which is there. Even in there, if you belong to a caste group or religious group or anything which is not very prominent, you will not even show up for the elections which are there. So it is not inclusive. If compulsory voting comes, it will become inclusive. And finally, it will lead to the political education. People will be more aware of what these processes are. Right now, because we are aspirants and we study polity, we know, okay, what all is there in an election process. There is an election commission, then there is a electoral roll which is there. You need a voter's identity card which is there. You shouldn't assume that every other citizen of India knows this. No. But when voting becomes compulsory, they will be forced to know all this. This will lead to a much more politically aware society, is what people who support compulsory voting say. Okay, now hold your thought over there. Now let's go into the arguments against compulsory voting, and I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people going to support these arguments over here, because in the first place I did see a lot of you who said no, we don't want compulsory voting. First thing, let me just place this before you. When you are in a country which grants you certain rights, it grants you certain liberties to exercise that right and to not exercise that right. So if there is a right to freedom of speech and expression, I can exercise that right and be, okay, I'm using my freedom of speech and expression. Or I also implicitly have the right to not use freedom of speech and expression. Okay, I'll make it even more simple. There is something called as right to form associations. There is also a fundamental right called as right to form associations. If I'm saying you have a right to form associations, does it compulsorily mean, okay, I have to be part of some association? No. If in the place that you're working, it's a government office, you have the right to form association. Everybody is forming an association and they are all discussing things and all that. You also have a right not to be part of the association. Nobody is going to compulsorily come and tell you, no, since we have a fundamental right to form association, you will have to be part of the association also. Is this point clear to all of you? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, okay. I can see responses coming in. So now the idea is, if you are granted a right, okay, implicitly the idea is you have the right to not exercise that right also. If you are granted freedom of speech and expression, that does not mean that every other time you get out on the streets and you say your freedom of speech and expression. Where you want to, you will use it. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it at all. So you are implicitly granted the right to not use that right. Get it? So this applies everywhere. And this is the truest idea of liberty. See, if I want to follow a religion I have, there is something called as right to practice any religion I want. Now, don't you see people who don't want to follow any religion? There are people who are atheists, right? So are they infringing their fundamental right? No. Right to follow any religion is being said. What if I don't want to follow any religion? That is also implicitly. Implicitly means it will not be spelled out, it will not be written there in the right, but it is something that you have to understand. If right to follow a religion is being given to you, you also have the right to not follow the religion. Understand? So similarly, now if a right to vote is given to you, you implicitly have the right to not vote also if you don't want to do it. If it's a democracy, nobody can make you exercise your liberties. If somebody is making you exercise your liberty, can you call it liberty itself? Liberty means what? Freedom. If somebody is forcefully telling you, no, you speak, you exercise your freedom of speech and expression, is that freedom? No, you will do it out of fear, not because you want freedom to do it. Right? So similarly, the idea is, if you are enforcing compulsory voting, you are in turn making it like a very fearful process where people are not able to exercise their right to not vote. Is this concept now clear to all of you? Perfect, perfect, perfect. See all the good responses. Now, let's get into what our articles have to say. First thing is violation of Article 21. What is violation of Article 21? Article 21 basically grants you the right to live your life with dignity. Okay, live your life with dignity without any fear. Get the idea? If you want to live a life with dignity, you shouldn't be scared of anything. So now one of the points raised by those who are against compulsory voting is, when you are basically telling people to do this or to try, like, okay, you have to do this, you are going or you are exercising it through fear. And when something is done under fear, the idea is that person is not doing it with his complete dignity, because dignity is what? You respect your opinion and you are able to exercise it. But then if compulsory voting is there, it was going against it, you are inflicting fear on it, fear on people. Next thing comes, while citizens may exercise their civil rights, which is free speech, marriage, etc., they are not compelled to do any of these things. Is anyone coming and telling you, okay, there is a marriageable age? After something other than your relatives and families, anyone coming and telling you, the state is coming and telling you, please get married, you've crossed the marriageable age, why are you not getting married? Nobody's coming and telling you that, right? So similarly, why only voting? Why is voting being put into a pedestal like that? So again, furthermore, compulsory voting may infringe other rights. See, I have a right to practice my profession. That is a fundamental right. Okay, I have a right to practice my profession under any condition, which is there. Some exceptions are given. Now you are making compulsory voting. Okay. I am a daily wage earner. Okay. If I am a daily wage earner, I have to compulsory go and vote to some place which is there. I will lose my money for that day. Now, the question is, if that is the case, how will you ensure, or this compulsory voting right, or the idea of compulsory voting has now overturned or tried to infringe? Infringe means what? If you have one right, compulsory voting is trying to cross it. So I am not able to practice my right to profession on that particular day because right to, or this compulsory voting idea is here. On that day, I cannot work. But then ideally, I have a right to work. That is not getting happening. Or what happens is, on that day, I will lose my wage for it. Again, why should I lose my wage? Because this is a fundamental right to practice any profession. If you look on any day, right to vote is just a constitutional right which is there. I can see some of you have queries regarding the constitutional right. I will get to it. Okay. Don't worry. I will get to it. Okay. So this becomes the thing. So on any day, fundamental right is a bigger right or a more important right than any other constitutional legal right which is there. So what happens? You will have to further that. So again, you are violating Article 21. And when you put compulsory voting, we might even violate any other rights which are granted in a fundamental manner. Is this clear to all of you? Perfect. Now coming to violation of Article 19. This is a very interesting take. I was reading through all these political theories regarding voting, and there is something called as expressive idea of voting. Okay. Expressive idea of voting says that when you vote, you are expressing your opinion, you're expressing some part of your personality out there. Okay. Just like that, see, when you have a football match or a cricket match, your favorite team, India is playing against Pakistan. Okay. Now we don't know what the odds are of winning. You can go to the stadium. Will all of when we go to the stadium, we don't know what the match is turning out to be. Okay. And but despite whatever the outcome is, we will make sure we go over there. We might paint our faces with our national flag pictures. We might carry the national flag. We might sing the songs of that support India over there. We might show our support over there, right? We are expressing our support. Now it doesn't count. Okay, they'll be like, how? Okay, almost 50,000 people came from the Indian side, so yes, maybe India will win today. That is not how the match result is decided. Okay, but nevertheless, you show your support for the team that you want, right? We all have done this at some point, right? Now, similarly, even when you're voting, the idea is you do not know who will win, but then still you are voting to show some kind of a support, and the support is not for that specific political party which is there, the support for the idea of democracy. Okay, now this rests upon the idea that voting is equal to expression. Expression means what? You are taking out some idea that you have. You want democracy to survive, so you're going and voting. You want a particular political party to survive, so you're going and voting. Whatever it is, you are expressing an opinion of yours. Okay. Now, when someone comes and tells you you have to compulsorily vote, what they are trying to do is, we have something called as freedom of speech and expression, right? So when we are voting by our own wish and will, we are exercising our freedom. But if someone comes and tells you you have to vote, they are going against our freedom of speech and expression. Not speech, but the specific part, freedom of expression. Is this concept clear to you? If you've got this, this is very interesting. Why? Because we will never see it in that viewpoint, right? We do not, when we go and vote, we're like, okay, fine, we'll all take that selfie which is there and we're like, yeah, voted, and we'll come back. But then the idea is, somehow, according to political theorists, we are expressing ourselves, and when someone comes and tells you you should vote, they are infringing or they are crossing over our freedom of speech and expression. Perfect. Okay, so here that is the thing. And finally, coming into these are viewpoints. Again, I want you to understand, for any issue, there will be people who support it and who are against it. So those who are against it, try putting this third point, which is democratic discontent. Democratic discontent basically means the system of compulsory registration and voting will reduce the legitimacy of elected representatives. How so? Okay, I'll tell you this. This is also an interesting take, because what happened is, in Australia, voter turnout came out to be good, and the supporters were going on saying that, yeah, when voter turnout comes good, obviously there should be better election results, people will be more aware, people will be more happy with, they will start talking about the democracy. But what happened in Australia is, when they made voting compulsory, people after a point, started seeing that they are coming and voting, but nothing is happening. Nothing is happening means, you are voting, you are made to compulsorily vote, you are going on raising your dissent and everything, but nothing is changing at the top. Your governance is not changing, the amount of services you're getting is not changing, you are still in that pathetic, miserable life that you are leading. So people are like, why are you making us compulsorily vote again? See, if you are making us compulsorily vote, you should compulsorily give us proper democracy and governance. But here, that did not happen. So at one point, people started losing interest in voting, but still, because it was legally mandated, they would still go and vote. And when they started going and voting, what they started doing is, if somebody is there who's having some very least chance of winning, in every election you will see people, some of them will stand the just for the sake of standing in the elections. They want to tell, yeah, I've stood for election once. So there'll be people like that. People started randomly voting for some person who's not even interested in the governance, because people got tired of the existing democratic structures, not democratic structures, the existing governments which are there, and the governments kept on making people vote, but without actually improving upon the services. So when they got and they were asked to compulsorily vote again and again, what they did is that, I will vote something and all now. So in India and all, what would happen is, now there is a button called as Nota, none of the above. How many of you know about this? I saw someone who told me initially, I am a very proud Nota voter. Yes, Nota means none of the above. Okay, none of the above means, all the candidates which were fielded were not great. You feel that they will not support your democracy in anywhere, so I'm rejecting all of them. That is when you feel like none of them are good enough, you can press for Nota. Nowadays, very few people only go and actually vote for Nota over there, because again, what happens is that most of the time, the politics in India is very, very bipartisan. Bipartisan means that there will be 2 or 3 groups which will be campaigning, and you will always see people who are going to from a very prominent political party that wins. Now, if suppose compulsory voting comes in India and our governance does not improve, you will time and again see people expressing their discontent through Nota button. If Nota button happens, then what is going to happen? That election will not yield any results, which means that elections will have to be again conducted. So here, if in the Indian scenario compulsory voting comes, we should put compulsory voting only if you are confident that after you make the citizens compulsorily vote, you should compulsorily give the services to them. And these are the arguments against compulsory voting. Now I'm going to ask you that question again. You've heard both sides. Think for a moment and tell me, do we need, if you think that we need compulsory voting, do you think compulsory voting will actually do any good to India at this point in our democracy? Yes, I'm seeing a lot of you. There are people who are saying Nota will win the election. A lot of you who've said that. And yes, so that is again the conclusion which now coming back to that first slide that we saw. What was the first slide? The Union Minister of Law and Justice said, we don't need compulsory voting because it is not going to be a practical scenario in India. I hope this topic has been clear to all of you. Is it clear to all of you? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Now let's go into the poll question. Consider the following statements regarding compulsory voting, which was recently in the news. It can be defined as a legal obligation to attend the polls at the election time and perform whatever duties are required thereof electors. The idea of compulsory voting was advocated by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the Parliament of India. Okay, I'm going to not start the poll. Let me just set the poll, guys. Give me a minute. Okay, I'm launching the poll now, so get ready. You can start marking your answers. Don't worry if you mark the wrong answer. We have chances again. I know if you're new to this and all, when you mark the poll and all, sometimes it will be like, okay, all you have to ensure is if you've understood the topic well or not. Okay, so ensure that, Suvarna. Don't worry. Okay, poll time is ending. I hope you are. Yes, done. 67% of you have marked the right answer, which was A. What happened to the other guys? Did all of you get confused over here, or did you somehow miss the beginning of the class? Because it's in the beginning of the class that we had discussed about these things. Anyway, no, don't start talking about the leaderboard at this point. I will show you the leaderboard. You know very well I do show it after 2 or 3 questions. Okay, so I'll show it to you. Don't worry. Let's look at the question. It can be defined when if and when compulsory voting comes. It will be defined as the legal obligation to attend the polls at the election time and perform whatever duties are required there of the electors. What is required of the electors? You have to go in a very decent manner, stand there, vote, keep it secret, come out. This is the duties of the elector, but all this will have to be done compulsorily. So that first statement is correct. Second statement, B.R. Ambedkar was against the idea of compulsory voting. I want you to keep this point in, guys. See, when you study polity also, two subjects, when you study polity and when you study history, it's practically impossible for us to remember everything because, come on, we are just human brains with very limited capacity, which is that human brain has huge capacity, but then we don't use it as much. So what happens is we cannot remember all of these things. So even if you have not learned a thing by heart, or if you've not understood a thing also, in this question, what is being said? The idea of compulsory voting was advocated by Dr. B.R. Advocated means supported by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the Parliament of India. My question is, we all know Dr. B.R. Ambedkar to be a person who has always stood for having kind of, like everybody should be part of the democracy in a very free manner. He was always in for certain freedoms which were there. Everybody should have the freedom to live their life in whatever manner they want. That is why he was a very strong advocate for your SC and ST rights which were there. Understand? So, do you think such a person will advocate something like compulsory voting? This is common sense. Even if you don't know if B.R. Ambedkar has said it or not, you know about B.R. Ambedkar otherwise. He doesn't seem like the kind of person who would advocate something like this. So, again, when you study subjects like polity or history, rather than learning every other point by heart, understand that, okay, when you hear B.R. Ambedkar, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, okay, these people have a certain quality to them. They are, for example, if I speak Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, I always know, okay, he has that very revolutionary spirit in him. So any statement which says that he had some very moderate idea, I will be like, no way, because he was always having that kind of a revolutionary spirit. This is how you can even use your common sense to actually eliminate questions. And the second statement is wrong. The answer to the question is A, one only. Okay. Now coming to the main question about here. Okay, first thing, how many of you wrote the last time? I know last week I didn't take this thing, the weekly current affairs, but before that I've asked all of you to write answers. How many of you said that? Okay. Some of you said, okay, yes, you will start writing from today. The thing is, the growing democratic discontent in vibrant democracies can be reversed by adopting the system of compulsory voting. Critically analyze. Okay. So when it comes to over here, what you are supposed to be doing, the democratic discontent, you have to start from the idea of democratic discontent. Why is there a growing democratic discontent in vibrant democracies? What is vibrant? Vibrant means the countries where you have democracy working in a good manner. You have India as an example. So you can start with India as an example, and you can say in growing democracies like, or in vibrant democracies like India, there's a growing democratic discontent because of the fact that the people who are we are electing and putting into the post might not be serving to the people's wish and will, so on. So you can start off, and there's a growing need for having some kind of a efficient system when it comes to practicing democracy. Then you can basically, this is actually a critically analyzed question, so you can say all the points against the idea of compulsory voting, and then you can tell some points about the for also, like, why you need compulsory voting. Now coming into that question where you all had that doubt, the right to vote part. Okay. Now let me make it very clear to you guys. Right to vote, I know some of you have had a question there, was a previous year question, which I believe was asked in either, you can check these both years question paper, it was in 2016 and 18. So the idea of right to vote, when they had asked the question and they had put four statements, the reason why right to vote was specifically picked that year was, until then you see in a lot of sources, and I've personally also seen in a lot of places where they put right to vote as a legal right. Okay. And this is something that is being mentioned, I think, in your what you say question paper books. In certain places it is mentioned as right to vote is a legal right. I know students of mine who have even marked legal right. But the reason this question was asked is that specific year there was a case running in the Supreme Court, and after the verdict of the case, the Supreme Court clearly spelled it out. The right to vote is a constitutional right. And what is the difference between a constitutional right and a legal right? A legal right might be something, for example, you have some right that is given for only in a law which is there. Okay, that law might be there. That sometimes what happens is, if you have a law, the right will be there in the law, but it will not be imbibed, or it will not be carried on to the constitution. When you take it into the constitution only, it becomes a constitutional right. The right to vote is a constitutional right because it is mentioned in the Representation of Peoples Act 1951, and even in Article 326 it is mentioned. That is why it is a constitutional right. Okay, so I hope that has cleared your doubts. Is that doubt clear? Perfect. Now let's go into the second topic, which is India Bangladesh River Agreement, which is there. Now coming into India Bangladesh River Agreement, I'll tell you from what point of view we are going to study this. First of all, when you study your international relations, and there is something called as India and neighborhood relations, and in that India and neighborhood relations, at this point there are only few neighbors with which we have a very good, I would say, better relation than the others. Bangladesh happens to be one of them. Okay, the relation with Bangladesh is quite I wouldn't say, it is amusing, for one of the reasons being that whenever the governments keep changing, so in Bangladesh, what happens is, there is a party which is, they like India a lot, they support India a lot, and there is another party which do not support India, or they feel like, no, we don't have to have some kind of a allegiance with India. So 5 years, one party will be in election and one party will come to power, which are very close to India. So what happens is, they will be supporting India made measures. Next 5 years, the other party ruled government will come and they'll be like, no, 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 we don't want any relations with India. Right now, we are going into a time where there are good relations between India and Bangladesh, and thus comes into the question about what is a major viewpoint between India and Bangladesh, and that is water. The context of this topic is, India and Bangladesh are likely to sign at least one major river agreement, which is your Kushiara, based on a Kushiara river that is flowing. We will be discussing about Kushiara. Now, we are going to sign a river agreement with Bangladesh in the coming Joint River Commission, which is there. Now, all these terms might sound confusing at this point. Let's start looking into why this water becomes such a big issue between India and Bangladesh. So first, let's just look into the geography. Can you all see the map in a very clear manner? Perfect. So look at this over here. You have Bangladesh, you have India over here. You see that a lot of major rivers of India, which is be it your Brahmaputra, be it your Ganga, all these rivers, you have river Teesta, you have river Barak. Barak is over here, guys. Barak might seem like a small river, but then from a UPSC point of view, it is a very, very important river that you have to keep in mind. Okay. So Barak is there, Brahmaputra is there, Ganga is there, Teesta is there. All of these rivers are there, and these rivers are constantly, it's moving from India to Bangladesh. It is, some rivers are crossing from the northeastern part and getting into Bangladesh. So you have a lot of shared geography over here. And you will see that states of your Assam, West Bengal, and all are the ones that are at the crux of these rivers which are there. Crux means they are the ones from where that river is finally flowing into Bangladesh. Now you have to understand one thing. Bangladesh happens to be at the lower riparian state. You must have studied in geography about what it is. Riparian. What is riparian? If a river is flowing, there is an upper stream which is there and there is a downstream which is there. Okay, so Bangladesh happens to be in the downstream area because the river is starting from India. It's coming all the way from the Himalayas and all flowing. Finally, it reaches into Bangladesh, and from Bangladesh, it gets into the Bay of Bengal, which means Bangladesh is in the lower riparian area. Riparian means the area where the river will be, or the lower part of the river and the river basin which is there. Okay. Now, constantly, Bangladesh is going on complaining. See, in the first place, you are getting a major part of the river. And you are building all your dams over there. There is dam, there's hydroelectric power plant and everything. And finally, it is coming into Bangladesh. By the time, Bangladesh is like, there is no water only left for us. Because whenever you construct dams, whenever you extract water for hydroelectric power, it affects the flow of the river. For example, you have a river flowing at very fast speed. You put a dam over here, you are harnessing the energy and you're creating hydroelectric power plants. After that, the course of the river will be in a much lesser flow. So by the time it is reaching Bangladesh, one thing, the river will not be flowing in a very, what you say, fast, full manner so that Bangladesh can have some kind of a hydroelectric power plant or anything over there. And on top, even the water quality and the water content of the river is also bad. So Bangladesh has been telling, please help us out over here, because Bangladesh is also a agriculture country as it is, because you have jute, you have rice, you have a lot of these agriculture products which need a lot of water. So Bangladesh has been constantly saying, you please consider us also. Whenever the river is coming, let's share the water in a proper manner. You don't keep on building dams and affect our water flow also. So based on this, way back in 1996, in our international relations, we had decided that, okay, we have to treat our neighbors with much more consideration. And we brought about something called as, I know those who are in PSI or optional would have known about this. This is called as your Gujral Doctrine. How many of you have heard about Gujral Doctrine? Okay, no, most of you have not heard. I'll tell you. Gujral happened to be at the point, he later on became even at that point, he had a huge role to play in the foreign affairs, which was there. He even went on to be the prime minister for a brief time. So at that point, he basically came out with the Gujral Doctrine. I.K. Gujral, that was his name. So Gujral came about and said that, see, we don't have much friends in the neighborhood. Pakistan is our enemy. You have, by then, you've also made an enemy out of Sri Lanka because of certain conditions which are there. The other countries which are left back, you have Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar. So for all the other countries, Gujral said, we are going to treat them like our friends. Now, when I'm saying friends, you all know that kind of a friendship where I'm pretty sure you all would know that there are two of you, you constantly keep giving. You're like, okay, fine. Okay, if you're going out to eat, you're like, I'll pay your bill. If you're going for a movie, you're like, no, I'll only pay the bill. The other friend is like, okay, fine, sure, you only do whatever you want. How many of you have friends like that? None of you have friends like that. You all have to happen to have very, very healthy friends, I must say. So there are friends which would, what would happen is, you keep on giving and you don't expect anything in return. You are not expecting anything in return. The friend takes the benefit also. So Gujral said, we are going to treat our neighbors like friends. We're going to keep giving to them whatever is possible. Money, resources, food, technology, whatever they need, we will give. But we don't want anything from them. Why? Because Gujral said, see, these are countries which are even more far worse performing than us. So why we have to take something from them? Let's just help them out. In that point of view, at this point, Bangladesh was like, okay, fine, since you're helping us all out, can you please give us proper water? Gujral was like, granted. And thus came about the Ganga Water Sharing Treaty 1996. Okay, so in Ganga Water Sharing Treaty, it was a bilateral treaty. Bilateral means what? Between two countries, which is India and Bangladesh. Okay, and India and Bangladesh, they signed this treaty and they ensured that the water of river Ganga will be shared in an equitable manner. Which means after the entire river flows, it will not be like, okay, you will construct hydroelectric power and then you will not give Bangladesh proper water. There will be enough measures taken so that Bangladesh also gets enough water. And Bangladesh was very happy with the Ganga Water Sharing Treaty, because what happened is, within 1 year, we took the treaty, we signed it, we put it into practice, and Bangladesh started getting proper water also. Okay, so this also said for 30 years is where this treaty would be in practice. For 30 years, this water sharing treaty will be in practice. After that, we will keep renewing it. Okay, Bangladesh was happy. And to also see that this is happening, or the sharing of water is happening in a proper manner, they set up something called as a joint committee. What is a joint committee? Both members of your India and Bangladesh would be there. Every 5 years, they will check, okay, are you getting proper water? Is anything affecting your flow of water? And this will be done. So this is one of the most successful treaties India has signed with another country, and this is going well. But certain other rivers also, Bangladesh had a concern. There was the Teesta River. There was the Barak River. In all of these rivers, Bangladesh was like, see, you're doing this for Ganga. Can you please do this properly for other rivers also? There's also a river called as Feni River. Here also, they were like, can you please do this? But then at that point, India was like, okay, here we need to discuss a little bit more. Why? Because already when we signed the Ganga Water Sharing Treaty, the state which was at the distant end of it, you will see certain states raising a concern like, see, that is our water also, because you have West Bengal. In the other side, when you have Teesta and you have Barak, you have states which are on the northeastern side. They were like, you're taking our water and giving to another country. So don't you even care for your own states? So they were raising a concern. So India was like, as of now, we will do the Ganga Water Sharing Treaty, the Teesta and Barak, we will keep discussing about it. And until now, we have been discussing about it. We keep on discussing, there will be some issue over there, it stops. Now, recently, what started happening is that, and this is in the present times, Bangladesh again started raising the issue that, okay, we have to get back on this water sharing treaty in a proper manner. And there are almost 54 rivers between India and Bangladesh. But then we have just one bilateral treaty, and that is the Ganga Water Sharing Treaty, which is there. So Bangladesh was like, see, this Joint Rivers Commission, which is there, which we have started from 1972 onwards, we have to somehow revive it. Why? Because in 1972, we created Joint Rivers Commission. When the Ganga Water Sharing Treaty happened, they were like, okay, now this is all done. They would just meet in five years just to check about Ganga water sharing treaty. They will not discuss about anything else in a proper manner. So here, Bangladesh raised the query that we need to conduct proper meetings, and in these meetings, we need to talk about the other rivers also. And thus, what happened is, so this joint river commission is headed by the ministers of both, water resource ministers of both countries. And in the very recent meeting that was held, discussions have been started for all these rivers: Teesta, Feni, and you have Kushiara, Manu, Muri, Kuvai, Gumti, Jaldaka, and Torsa. Now, let me tell you, from seeing UPSC for the last 10 years or so, take these rivers. I will already show you Kushiara, because Kushiara is, they are on the verge of signing a treaty, and in a few days, around the time when the meetings conclude, they will be signing the treaty also. So Kushiara becomes extremely important. But all these other rivers, Manu, Muri, Jaldaka, Kovai, Gumti, Torsa, these can all come as, this is a tributary of what river? Is this a distributary or tributary? What is the difference? Any of these questions can come. Okay, so I'll just show you something about the Kushiara river, because I do feel, since Kushiara, the agreement is going to be signed on, will be a major important thing. Coming to the Kushiara river over here, can you all see the Kushiara river? I'll just mark it for you in a good manner. This is your Kushiara. Enters Dhaka. Kushiara is a transboundary river. What is a transboundary river? It basically is lying, for example, if you look at Assam over here, on the Assam-Bangladesh border is where the Kushiara starts from. Okay, so it's a transboundary. Transboundary means it's crossing over boundaries of two countries. When I'm saying Assam, it's India, and then you have Bangladesh. It's crossing over the boundaries of two countries. It's a transboundary river. It forms on the Indian side, which is there on the India-Bangladesh border, and it forms as a branch of the Barak River. Keep this in mind. By heart it, write it somewhere, whatever you need to do to keep this in mind. Kushiara is basically a branch of the Barak River, which is there. And the Barak River, I already told you, is a hot favorite of UPSC. So keep that in mind. Now here in the Joint Rivers Commission meeting, this long pending demand of Bangladesh to ensure that the Kushiara River's water are shared properly is going to come to a fulfillment, and they are going to finally agree to this demand, and they're going to sign an agreement on this. The details of the agreement will come only after it is signed, because it is an international thing which is there. It's an international treaty which is there. The details of it will come only after it's signed. But then I am telling you this, and I'm giving you the background right now, because next time you hear about this somewhere, you should be equipped with all this necessary knowledge. Is this clear to all of you? Perfect. Now, before I go into the question, let me just see this. Okay, guys, one more thing over here. When you study these kind of topics, especially your IR and geography things, in your notes, because some of you have asked me, what kind of, how to make notes over here. In this case, what I want you to do is, I am hoping those who have already are in the middle of your preparation would have made maps for rivers. Okay, so if you've already made maps for rivers, you try, for example, you would have drawn a Barak River in a map, right? Try putting that Kushiara, try understanding through what all areas it is going. You can just take either this diagram, or you can even take your atlas and check it out over there. So always study these map-based things with an atlas in your hand. Don't be like, Kushiara, Assam, it is going like that, it is coming down like this. You will not be able to imagine so much. So use your atlas and do it. Okay. Now let me come into the question which is there. Yes. Consider the following statements in relation to Ganga Water Sharing Treaty 1996, which was recently in the news. Guys, read the question properly. Now, I don't want to say, ma'am, I got the wrong answer, I hit the wrong option and all. Be careful over here. It is a multilateral treaty signed between India, Bangladesh and Nepal. The treaty established a 30-year water sharing arrangement. It provides for equal distribution of waters of the Teesta River between India and Bangladesh. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? I think it's a very simple question. I'll just launch the poll. Just give me a moment, guys. Okay, start marking your answers. That's very true. Some of you mentioned all the minute details are not given in the atlas. I'll tell you what I did for this. So I, for example, if I want to find Feni River, it might not be very clearly given in the atlas, because for some rivers and all, they will not put the name in a proper manner. What I used to do when I was preparing is, if I want to know any small river, the details of any small river, I will separately search it on Google, and I will get the map of it. And I will either take the printout of the map, because at that point I would be like, okay, if I see the printout only, I can see it for a fact. If I'm not taking a printout, I would take a map of my own, and based on what is there in that Google map which is there, I would draw it on my map and keep. So I know minute details will not be there. I also used to do one thing, but now you guys need not do this because we are giving you the information. So if there is some random river, oh, you guys have marked the answer, but then I'll tell you this first. If there's a random river, for example, there are 5-6 other rivers that we talked about, no, Jaldaka and all that. If you come across these and you need to get information about that, do the same process. Search separately for the image, the map image of it, and try marking it. Is that clear, guys? Yes. Now coming, okay, almost 73% of you have marked the right answer. What is happening? Why am I not seeing numbers of 80 and 90% for such a simple question? Let's see where you guys went wrong. Okay, you want to see the leaderboard now? No response, huh? Okay, anyway, yeah, the leaderboard is here. I'm not going to read out any names. I have been constantly told, like, you're not reading out my name and all that. So here are all you all can see for yourself, I believe. Can you all see the leaderboard? Yes? Yes. Okay. Now coming into the question, where did you guys go wrong? It is a multilateral treaty signed between India, Bangladesh and Nepal. Where did Nepal come in this? We are talking about Ganga water sharing, and we were talking about it is a bilateral treaty. There's no Nepal in this. The statement is wrong. Second statement, it established a 30-year water sharing arrangement. So that is correct. It provides for equal distribution of the Teesta River between India and Bangladesh. Guys, it's there in the question only, Ganga water sharing treaty. And they're asking about Teesta River. And I told you, Teesta River, there is still a dispute. We have not solved it. So this third statement is also wrong. The answer to the question is B, 2 only. Okay? Fine. Now coming into the question. Discuss various water disputes between India and Bangladesh and suggest some measures to resolve these disputes. Here, I want you to get a little bit more creative over here. Okay. So the idea is what? You have several water disputes between India and Bangladesh, and you will study this in detail in your IR classes, which are there. But that point, you can talk about the Ganga, you can talk about the Teesta, you can talk about the Feni River, all of these things. The measures to solve these disputes. The measures to solve these disputes, you can start off by saying there should be a well-functioning joint commission that discusses these things on the models of you have for the Indus River. There is another river called as your Indus River, which flows between India and Pakistan. For the Indus River, we've managed to have at least a working water sharing treaty between us, between India and Pakistan. So on the models of that, we can have a proper working committee. Apart from that, see, Bangladesh's biggest problem is we are creating hydroelectric power plants, we are taking energy from it, and Bangladesh is not able to access any electricity which is there. So rather than from the water sharing point of view, what you can do is have a trade-off for the electricity. You can also share the electricity which is generated, right? So have some kind of a suggestion like that also. So you can suggest various other measures to imbibe water sharing treaties which we have conducted when it comes to Pakistan and Indus River, to imbibe the qualities of that, to clearly divide certain rivers as to, okay, Bangladesh can take a little bit more water from there. See which areas of Bangladesh are getting affected by the lack of water shortage. Maybe have some kind of a measures for those specific places. These things can be done, because at the end of the day, even we need water. So we cannot be sharing all the majority of the water which is there. So you will have to find alternate measures. Okay, so this is an interesting question, because this part, the some measures to solve the water disputes, is something that you can get your creativity and how can you solve it. I already saw some suggestions and all, already mentioned over there. Now coming into the third topic of the day, Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 has been withdrawn. Now coming into the point. See, bill has been withdrawn. Means now it is not put up for discussion. The bill was presented, there was enough discussion about it, and they felt the bill is not having its necessary purpose, and they've cancelled. They've taken out the bill, so now there's not going to be any voting on it. They've withdrawn the bill to put or to bring back a much more stronger bill that is there. Now, to understand why it was withdrawn and why we will be bringing back a stronger bill, you have to first start from the core idea, which is, what is this personal data? The reason I put this specific information over here is, if you look at questions that have come in 2019 and 20 based on Aadhaar. Aadhaar is something that takes our personal data. Okay, it takes our iris recognition, the eye point which is there. It takes our fingerprint. It takes certain other information that is there, our personal details which are there. And every other time UPSC has asked a question on Aadhaar which has taken our personal data, they've not asked simple questions. They have somehow twisted the question, leading us to think, okay, is this personal data or this is not personal data? For example, I know my iris has been taken, iris print, we all have put that picture and we know that, okay, that thing has been taken. But then if I'm saying the way I'm walking, Aadhaar does not collect it. The question was asked, what all will come as personal data? So if, for example, the way I am walking, is that a personal data? How many of you think that is a personal data or personal information? Yes, it is, guys. That is the shocking part. Why? Because in the UPSC examination hall, you will not think, I am walking like everybody, only I'm walking in a very normal manner. But the way a person walks, the gait of a person, the way you walk is called as gait, G-A-I-T. That means some of us will be walking, giving some more strength to the ground. Some of us will be walking in a simple manner. Some of us will be like, we will not even be walking, we'll be running. So these are all the different types of walks which are there. A person's gait and the way his feet is placed is very unique. So that data is also personal data. So the UPSC twists and turns this information called as personal information. That is why I decided to put this over here. Okay, so any characteristic, trait, attribute, or any other feature information that can be used to identify a person is called as personal data. Okay, so I just want you to keep this in mind. If UPSC is asking a very twisted question, I just want you to think about, okay, is that feature going to help someone identify a person? In your friends group and all, they would be telling, no, he's that guy who walks very, in a very weird manner. He's the guy who has that sixth finger which is there. Whatever is your physical attribute can be used to identify who you are. So any characteristic, trait, attribute, or anything which can use to be identify you is considered as personal data. And this definition was taken from the withdrawn bill which is there, right? The withdrawn bill is what had given this definition. Now, what all will come under personal data? Look at this. Your economic, culture, or social identity of a person, which means the money you have, the caste, the religion, what values you have, not values, but then all these important things like cultural identities that you have, all this will come under personal data. Health information. If you have any health implants in you, what is your pulse rate? What is the heart? Are you having some very elevated heart rhythm which is there? Are you having any cuts? Are you having any internal issues? All this health information is personal data. Physical attributes. Anything from the fact of my hair, my eye color, the shape of my face, the way I walk, the spread of my hand which is there, everything are all personal data. My name, again, that is the one unique thing that we, not unique, but the most important thing that we always say, that says, this is me. So again, that is also a personal data. Where you are located, the location specific thing, so from what part you are, what area you're coming from, that is also a personal data. Where you are currently is also personal data. You might be coming from one state or one place, but you might be somewhere else, and that is also a personal data. Online identifiers including IP address, when we try to get onto whatever server we are getting into or whatever system we are getting into, will have an IP address, and that can be used to identify you. Must have heard, no, when new movies come out, someone will try to leak the print and all. How do you get hold of them? Don't get hold of them because you know their face and photograph and all that. Get hold of them because of the IP address. Any identification number, voter's ID, Aadhaar card, everything. Okay. Now you all see, the idea is what? Any of these things can be imitated. For example, we must have seen all these movies where even the fingerprint of people can be imitated. But here, what they are asking is not if the personal data can be imitated or not. The idea is these are all personal data. If you're using it to identify or not is a different question. For example, see why in the Aadhaar they are just taking our biometric, like the iris which is there and the fingerprint. There are other data also which is there. No, one thing is the practicality. This is the one that you can easily take, and the other thing is that to check the person's walk, this requires extensive equipment which is there. So again, that becomes a problem. So I'm not saying, the idea is not that okay, none of these things can be taken up by other people. You have a lot of places where people take up the voters number of other people, the Aadhaar number of other people. So you can, these all things can be misused or imitated or malpracticed. But the idea is these are all what you generally concerned, or you are generally talking, when you're talking about personal data, this is what they are trying to tell you. This is this concept clear to all of you? That is exactly my point, Shubham. You can have, see, Shubham is here, Shubham can be another person, Shubham can be a third person. But the point is, this is, they won't identify you just with Shubham. They will see, okay, Shubham with a voter's ID card of this number, with an eye color of this number, with an IP address of this number. They will use 3-4 factors to identify you. It will not be like, okay, all the Shubhams, we are going to take them into prison. That is not the idea. To identify you, they will use a combination of factors. Understand? So don't be, yeah, I think a lot of you are concerned as to if my personal data can someone imitate it. Don't worry, guys. But then idea comes to the point where now we have to discuss, because you all are also so concerned about it. Now we know these personal data that we have are very important to us. Be it the number, be it the kind of information that is there. So we are very protective of this. Thus brings into the idea as to why we need data protection. Okay, all these previous things that I just showed to you, when you access an online site, when you access your Google or Amazon or any Facebook, Instagram, any of these sites or which are there, all these data is somehow there with all these companies. Now you have these phones where you can put your fingerprint also. Now the fingerprint data is also with them. So all these data are with these companies. Are you not concerned that they must be doing something with this? How many of you are actually concerned that my data could be misused? Yes, there are a lot of people. I recently had an incident where my own parents, they were so concerned just because they saw their Aadhaar number was printed on a different form, some place where they did not give their Aadhaar number. They were concerned about it. I was like, okay, fine, because the very idea where, your number could be shared by some 2-3 groups which are there, and you can put it into forms even without us knowing, is a concern for us. If they're using it for this purpose, where else can they be using it? So again, this brings into the idea of why we need data protection. First thing, India is the second largest internet user base. India has the world's second largest internet user base, which is there, which means a large number of our population is right now on the internet, sharing their personal details. Not even voluntary. It need not be that, okay, I'm personally sharing it in a voluntary manner. Even when you log on to these details or log on to these sites, it's taken what your preferences are, some that economic and social political preferences, from the pages that you're seeing, from the content that you're reading, they will have already put you in a certain category. They would have already taken the data and put you like, this person has some kind of a left leaning ideas, or this person is supportive of the government. They would have already put you in some boxes already. We do not know. So again, because of all this, we have such a user base that is there, and so much of data is generated, and this data needs to be protected. Second thing is, we are pushing towards digital India. Digital India means what? Every single thing, from paying your electricity bill to booking an LPG cylinder to every day-to-day activity, will be on you. Applying for a job, the exam of the job, for example, maybe in a course of time, we do not even know, even the UPSC exam will be online. We do not know any of these things. If we are moving to a digital India's platform, everything will be digitalized in course of time. At that point, if we don't have data protection, how will you be sure that, okay, I send my answers, put my OMR or whatever sheet or whatever answers out there, and okay, yeah, it's all safe. You will have some concern, no? Somebody can hack into it, somebody can change it if they want. Again, coming to the point, you want to, or you have to protect your data. Coming to the next thing, right to privacy, and this we all know. We all are very concerned about the data, because at the end of the day, you do not want others to be misusing it in some manner, and this is a matter of privacy. You want your data to be protected because this is a very private detail of yours, and because of this itself, we need this data protection. Increasing cyber attacks. In the last few, I think 3 or 4 classes ago, I talked about Pegasus. You all remember about Pegasus, which was a kind of a malware which was there. Yes. So now, when there is so much of cyber attacks, if you're not even having any measure to protect it, have you all seen that news where people who were registered on the IRCTC, their details got hacked by a Chinese website and all the details were taken? And imagine, on IRCTC, you must be thinking, on IRCTC, what all details did I give? On IRCTC, we must have given our phone number, maybe our email address, and that is it, maybe. But do you realize you must have booked tickets on that? You must have seen what are the frequent trains that people use. So if you have all the database of the people who are using IRCTC sites, you know the age group of it, you know the trains that they're using. If China at one point of time wants to attack India on some manner, they can misuse all this data to somehow disrupt our transport services. So again, increasing cyber attacks tells that we need data protection so that it will not lead to further big attacks. Because of all this, we have tried making policy, but then we have not had some kind of a comprehensive policy. What is a comprehensive policy? See, they are trying to protect my data, our data. We all are citizens. But then we never get to know, we never hear any discussions about this. It is being decided by the representatives alone. So we need to have a comprehensive policy which will take in concern all our different concerns or different worries that we have. Finally, your unregulated and arbitrary use of data by technology giants. How many of you have seen this image of Mark Zuckerberg sitting in this US court-like scenario? And they're going on questioning him, and he has no proper answers as to what all Facebook is using the data for. How many of you have seen that? Yes, the kind of things, the major reason why now Facebook as a company is also receiving so much of flack for trying to misuse the data in several places. So what has happened is, when you are opening a country like India, which is so huge and filled with such large populations, you have to ensure that the technology giants like Google and Facebook and Microsoft, whoever's coming to India, are following certain laws that protect our data. But what if you don't even have a law? What will you enforce them with? So again, that becomes a problem. So finally, to strike the balance between digital economy, what is digital economy? The entire market which will be run. We all know now we are using our UPI apps and your Google Pay and Phone Pay for all of these activities. And we have linked very happily, we have linked our account number also to it, our phone number also to it, and we are sitting very peacefully over here. So if we have to have a balance between our data that is protected and to ensure that, okay, the data is shared in a good manner at least, we need a data protection or a law that comprehensively decides about data protection. And before we even discuss this, way back in 2012, you had a committee called as the AP Shah Committee, which clearly said, see, we need, if we are going in the direction of a very important or very vibrant digital economy, which is there, so we need certain measures to protect the privacy of people. And the AP Shah Committee had outlined certain principles, which said there are certain principles which are central to the right of privacy, which is there. And he also defined the right of privacy. Later on, when we had the 2017 Puttaswamy judgment, how many of you heard about the Puttaswamy judgment? Yes, the Puttaswamy judgment is one of the most revolutionary judgments of our times. Why? Because Puttaswamy judgment is the one that said that right to privacy is as important as your right to life, which is there. So he put, or they put, right to privacy as an intrinsic. Intrinsic means a very important part of the right to life and personal freedom. It's for the very first time that we are also thinking, yeah, we did not have right to privacy until now. We should have had that even earlier. So right to privacy was brought about in 2017 by the Puttaswamy judgment. Right after that, in 2018, when, because right to privacy, everybody was concerned about, okay, if we are having right to privacy, what is happening with our data? There was a Justice B.N. Srikrishna committee which said that, okay, we have to make a bill, and they made they created a draft bill. What is a draft bill? It is just a rough idea for what all you should have in your main bill, which is there. And then, based on this, in 2019, we had the Data Protection Bill 2019. Otherwise, it's also called as the Privacy Bill 2019. So, based on the Sri Krishna Committee report, they put it into the parliament. They said that, okay, let's make this a law, and they put it out there. But then what started happening? There was a lot of criticism against this bill. Now, why it was criticized, we'll discuss. So, a lot of criticism started happening. At this point, the bill was passed to a joint parliamentary committee. What is a joint parliamentary committee? A joint parliamentary committee means basically you will have the members of both the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha coming together, and they will sit together and they will discuss in detail about the bill. Because the bill has, if it has to become an act, it has to be passed both in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So they will discuss about it and they will say, okay, is there any issue with the bill? And finally, the Joint Parliamentary Committee gave its report, and based on that report, in very recently, in the last 1 week, the central government withdrew the bill. This is the entire flow of how the data protection bill has come about to be. Now, my point is, why was this bill, which was so important, withdrawn? First thing, there is something called as data localization. Hear me out very clearly, because this is a technical concept. Okay. When you collect, or any company collects data from us, the data is stored in servers, or servers means these are huge structures, could be there, and it is all stored in some place. Understand? When it is stored, what happens is, whenever they want to take any data out of it, it is retrieved from that server. Now, there are two things. In India, because there is, we are not a very technologically vibrant country, what happens is, a lot of our companies, they set up their storage servers in other countries out there, like Dubai, Singapore, Malaysia, and so on. Okay, because they feel like, okay, it will be safe over there, and it is much more cheaper also over there. and they have put, so whatever data they've collected from us, they have stored it in servers in these places. But this bill, which was the, the data protection bill which was there, it said you cannot store it here and there, you have to store it in India itself. Data localization, your data should be stored in the area. Localization means what? In the country from where that data is generated itself. Okay, so if the data is generated in India, you have to store it here itself. Now the problem is, in India, because we are not so technologically developed at this point, most of the companies which are your startup companies, they've already set up their servers in several places. They will suffer a huge loss if they have to put back the servers in India. Besides, in India, you do not have the enough technology to house these servers. Now, I'll tell you, if you've ever seen a server in any of your movies, server room in any of these movies, it is not just, okay, one hall, they will put one server. That is not the idea. You have entire expanse of area which are cooled, and they put all these servers stored in a very expanseful area. Now, in India, you don't have the technology also in a proper manner. It will build up in the course of time, but right now we don't have. So if you don't have the technology right now, but the law is saying, no, you have to put your data here itself. You have to store your data here itself. These startup companies will be like, okay, fine. In that case, we are not working in India only. We will take our business itself to somewhere else. So again, this data localization clause, which was there in the bill, was quite controversial. Next thing comes, and this is a very interesting thing, too many recommendations. After the Joint Parliamentary Committee discussed about the report, they submitted a 542-page report with almost 93 recommendations and 81 amendments. Now, what happens is, when you have almost 93 recommendations, you have to ensure each of these, when it comes to beef, after the bill is there, bill is what some of you have been asking me, what is the difference between a bill and an act? I'm just assuming you know this from your polity class, but then if you don't know, a bill is what, after the entire process of discussion and voting and all, the bill becomes an act. Until it is not voted or what is not discussed, it still remains a bill. So the bill is the starting stage, and final stages, it becomes an act. So this has not become an act. In the bill stage itself, they have thrown it out. Here in this case, when you have so many recommendations which are coming out, what would happen is, you have to somehow ensure that each of these recommendations, they become an act, and after the act is put into place, everybody is following these recommendations. Now that is the problem in India, because we are still coming up on this data protection and technology and everything. We don't have clear departments that can actually ensure that everybody is following the law itself. So now on top of it, if you're making a law or an act which is there, which is so comprehensive, it becomes quite difficult to comply with it. So again, the next point is compliance intensive. Compliance intensive means that you are constantly, for example, every single clause is there and you need something. Compliance means what? You have to obey it. So when you are given so many rules, for example, right now you all are attending the webinar which is there. So I'm coming over here and be like, okay, when you're attending the webinar, you all have to sit in a very straight manner. And straight manner, after that, I'm like, you all have to look into the screen always. You cannot eat during the webinar. You cannot speak during the webinar. I'm giving you some 10, 15 rules over there. After a point, you will be like, I'm done with this. I'm going. Right? Because you cannot, or this compliance, and somebody is going on checking also if all this is happening. So here what happens is, this is a law which the parliamentarians felt was not suited to our times right now. Why? Because all these companies are trying to come into India because they feel like, okay, here they might be treated in a little bit more free manner. But if we are making a data protection bill that is so compliance intensive, that they will not be so happy about it. So you have to understand, when this bill was discussed, a lot of the controversy and lot of the opposition came from your tech companies itself. Okay. Finally, pushback from major stakeholders. And this is what I was saying. You see that a lot of your tech companies, Google, Microsoft, they were like, See, we would rather do our business in some other place if you are trying to build such a very strict law which is there. So we don't want to do it here. So finally, this is something which they all had an issue with. Here, they are planning to put restrictions and penalties and everything on the data that is collected by all these private companies, all your technology companies. But central government has been exempted from this law. Central government, whatever data that they are taking, that is not coming under the data protection bill. So these companies were like, what is it? So your data need not be protected. And most of the important details that people are ready to share, the Aadhaar, the voter's ID which is there, the ration details which are there, the any government site details which are there, this is all stored by the central government, right? So the central government data should also be part of the bill. That was not done. And because of all this, the central government said, or the ruling party said that no, we're going to keep away this bill for the time being. We'll come back with a much more stronger bill. Is this concept clear to all of you? Clear. So now what is our way forward? And all of you, I saw a lot of you asking me, ma'am, how can we protect our data? Even I am also concerned, how can we protect our data? If we have to protect our data, first, we need a proper law. So the first thing that can be done is you need to have a proper law, and some of the other way forwards we'll discuss. First thing is data localization. You should not, or at this point, when India is a budding economy, if you put certain, what you say, important or certain restrictions like that, companies will move out of India. Rather than that, what you could do is you can ensure that in some cases at least, India can identify trusted geographies. One other concern India had when, when data was kept in several other places was, see, there would be some other country which might in the long run turn out to be an enemy of India. So if our data is stored by these private companies in that country, don't you think at some point they can only hack that system, those enemy countries? So India was also concerned that storing data in other places will be of a bit concern. We have to store it in India itself. Now here is where India, in the way forward, you can suggest something like India can identify something called as your trusted geographies. What is trusted geographies? Those countries or those areas where India is sure or India knows for a fact that they will not try to harm India. And that will be based on past experience, going and checking out the place, having a proper treaty with them. Based on that, India can have a list of trusted geographies where they can, maybe the data can be stored in these places. So this is a way forward, just a suggestion sort of a thing. India can also take a clue from certain strong and reliable data protection laws like European Union's General Data Protection Regulation. Again, this is a previous year question, guys. They just gave it GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, is concerned with which organization. And they gave EU, G20 and all that. And at that point was just coming up and the answer was EU. So again, the European Union has put up this general data protection regulation is a very, very strict data protection rule which is there. Every single any kind of incompliance will lead to huge penalties. That is why you see that your companies like Google and Microsoft, they have a separate standard of working itself when you come to these countries. This is one other viewpoint India raises. You can work in such strict conditions in the European Union countries. When we are putting such strict conditions, what is your problem? Because you are not, it's not like we are doing something that nobody has done in the world. EU has very strict rules and regulations when it comes to data protection. So India can take a clue from that and do the same thing and put these companies to say, this is the same thing that is we've derived from EU. If you can follow it there, you can follow it here also. Then coming to authority. You need to have something called as a data protection authority in India. For every other thing, if there's any concern, so if I am finding that my data has been misused, do you know this for a fact? I recently discovered this when I was, because I told you about my parents, they had an issue with their Aadhaar details being put out somewhere. So do you know, if something like this happens to you, to whom do you complain? Any idea to whom do you complain? In some places, you can complain to the cyber cell. Okay, you can go and complain to the cyber cell. So that is what even I thought, we'll go and complain to the cyber cell. But then once you go to the cyber cell, they will classify this as some kind of, because this, they do not see it like your data was taken from a cyber place which was there. They see some person has misused this, so they will send you to the police department, which is your superintendent of police and so on. From there they will tell you, so we cannot trace it back to who has done it, so this will go into the cyber cell. The idea is, there's no clarity on who can actually help you out. So in India, we are in dire need of a data protection authority, a body under it, and somebody that we all can access, so that if we find a breach of our data that is there, we can go and complain about it. So again, as envisaged in the Data Protection Bill 2019, this has to be put about, at least a data protection authority has to be put about. Time frame. As I told you, India is on the track of becoming the world's largest internet use base, which is there. So at this point, we cannot wait another 2-3 years before we make a law. We have to make it urgently, and we have to make it in very short time. Because of all this, these are the way forwards. I see a lot of you asked about data localization. Okay, so before I go into the question and before I go into the certain other parts, I'll just tell you what data localization is again. Data localization clearly means that any data which is generated from a certain place has to be stored in that country of origin itself. If your data, you are an Indian citizen, you are generating a data online right now, your data cannot be stored by the company in Singapore. Your data has to be stored in India itself. This is what was set by the Data Protection Bill. But then again, the companies were like, we have already set up servers in some other place. If you put a bill like this right now, how will we put our servers back over here? And India also does not have the technology. So now the bill is out. So is the provision of data localization. Is this clear to you at this point? Data localization. I'm asking this to those people who said, ma'am, can you please explain data localization again? Yes. Okay. If it's still not clear, we'll take it up at the end. Okay. Now, before I go into, I just want to show you this. This is the, can you see that amount of zeros which are over there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Every day, we are creating this much bytes of data. When we say we, I mean the entire world. 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years alone. Why do you think? There's so many sites we all very happily buy our food on Swiggy and buy our groceries on Big Basket and everything. Every other preferences of ours, our food preference, our what kind of soap you prefer, every other data is now being out and taken out. So you can see this is the amount of data that is being generated every day. In the course of time, they are saying that if you take all this data, and I'm not sure how many of you know this, do you know about something called as a floppy disk? I'm going to fairly assume you guys are young enough to know what old enough to know what floppy disks are. Some of you don't know. So yeah, earlier before you had the round disk and all, there was something called in a square shape thing called as a floppy disk, which could be used to store data. They're saying that if all the data in the world is stored into floppy disks, and if you are putting it one above the other, and the floppy disk is a very thin thing, by the way, okay, and it will reach to the height of 4 Eiffel Towers. You all know the Eiffel Towers in Paris? Yes, it will reach to the height of 4 Eiffel Towers, is what they are saying. So in this scenario, you need to have data protection. I just felt this, you have to understand the gravity of the situation. That is why it was shared to you. Now coming into the question for the day, question for this topic specifically. Which of the following committees or judgments are related to data protection? That was recently in the news. You have the Puttaswamy judgment, the Justice B.N. Sri Krishna committee, A.P. Shah committee, N.K. Singh committee. Select the correct answer using the codes given below. Okay, I'll launch the poll right now. Yes, start marking your answers. What happened, Shivam? You said you marked the answer. Don't say sorry and all. Don't worry. You can correct it next time. Okay? Don't be sorry. Just you just know for a fact. Okay, no, you know the right answer and keep it and study it. Yes, again, you have all marked your answers. Your answers are almost 63% of you have marked answer A, which is there. Let's see. I'm not showing the leaderboard. We'll keep it as surprise for the end. Okay. Puttaswamy judgment, I've told you. What is all this? Which of the following judgments or committees are related to data protection? Data protection started, I showed you that entire flow chart so that you will not miss anything. First thing which came was AP Shah committee. After that, you had the Puttaswamy judgment. Based on the Puttaswamy judgment, you had the Sri Krishna committee. All these things were there. NK Singh committee is not there. NK Singh committee is related to your economy, which is there. You will be studying in detail over there. Something called as FRBM is there, related to your fiscal deficit and things like that. NK Singh committee is related to that. Okay, so your answer is 1, 2, 3, and the answer is A. Okay, guys. Now coming into the mains question, analyze the reasons for withdrawing the Personal Data Protection Bill 2019. Also suggest some measures to improve the personal data protection. That, I think, out of all the 3 questions that we discussed today, this is going to be a very simple question. All the reasons I had given you in a very listed manner, all the measures to improve I've given you in a listed manner. So those who are getting to start writing your answers, like, you've not written much, 1 or 2 answers, this is the question you guys should try. How many of you are there like that? Yes. So I want you guys to try writing this answer. Now coming into diseases in news. There is some new diseases doing the rounds. One major disease is the Langya disease, and the other one is the lumpy skin disease. We have to study about both of them. Why? Because this is turning out to be something called as, in the course of time, we will start seeing that this is going to spread through all these different areas, and it might be of concern to us. So be it the lumpy skin disease or the Langya disease, which is there, it is now being seen in certain parts. Langya disease is still out in the open. It's there in the international world. You see it has originated from China, still there. Lumpy skin disease has been seen in cattle, and it has been seen in Rajasthan and Gujarat. Now let's go into the details of it. Langya virus, first one. Langya virus is a type of Henipa virus. Now, I know some of you would be like, ma'am, do we have to study all these terms? Now, until coronavirus happened in the world, I would have been telling you, you don't need to know all these singular terms which are there. But now again, because we've hit a pandemic and questions can always be asked on a very technical detail, that is why you need to know about some words like this. Don't by heart it, just understand what it means. For example, Langya is a new type of Henipa virus. See, every organism, when you divide it scientifically, it will have a group it comes from. Okay, just like we all have a huge family and we are a member of it, Similarly, the virus has a huge family, not its own family, but from the group it comes from. And the Langia virus belongs to the Henipa virus, and that's why it is also called as Langia Henipa virus or LAV, LAYV. Okay, and the Henipa virus infection, or any time someone is affected by any kind of Henipa virus, because see, Henipa virus is a huge family. There is Langia over there. There is some other encephalitis over there. So you can get any other disease from it also. So from this Henipa virus, whenever you are affected by Henipa virus, you will get respiratory illness and encephalitis. Encephalitis again means this kind, it is related. You have respiratory illness which will cause breathing problems. Encephalitis causes certain kind of swollen lymph nodes. What are lymph nodes? Okay, y'all, when you touch your ear and your part over here, do you feel at times when you get fever, it's somehow swollen over there? How many of you felt it? Yes. So you have all around your body, you have certain things called as your lymph nodes which are there. When you are affected by any category of Henipa virus, this is like this. Henipa virus is a huge family which has virus A, virus B, Langia virus. You have any other kind of virus also which is there. So this huge family is called as Henipa virus family. Any of these different type of viruses, when it affects you, it will cause respiratory illness and encephalitis. And similarly here also it has been, in the case of Langia virus, when you get it, you will have respiratory illness and encephalitis. So these are the symptoms. Okay, Langia virus is contagious and transmits from animals to humans. Again, we all know when initial days of coronavirus were there, we all heard about how corona had started maybe spreading from some meat markets which were there in certain provinces of China. Similarly, here also, Langia virus spreads from animals to humans. And that is why Langia virus is called as a zoonotic disease. Okay, zoonotic means it spreads from animal to humans. Zoo is always related to animals. Phyto is always related to plants. Okay, so zoo, whenever you see the term zoo, understand it is related to animals. So here it spreads from animals to humans. And again, it becomes of concern because once it spreads from animals to humans, this is exactly how coronavirus also happened. Initial spread was from animal to humans. Okay, after it got spread to humans, because it's a respiratory illness means what? When you're coughing, when you're sneezing, all that droplets will reach to another person. From human to human, it will spread extremely fast. So if it is not controlled, we are looking at the next huge outbreak which is there. So immediate measures have to be taken to control it. So this is basically a biosafety level 4 disease. And here is where I told you in this topic, I will be looking at something which could very well be a prelims question this time. So this is basically a biosafety level 4 disease. What is this biosafety level 4 disease? We won't look into each of these in a detailed manner, but I want you to understand biosafety. Biosafety means how harmful is that disease to other humans and how fast is it spreading. In effect, if you look at it, how serious is that disease? Based on that, you have 4 levels: biosafety level 1, biosafety level 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so here if you look at it, if that disease is a biosafety level 1 disease, it's just a minor threat. It poses just a minor threat. Anybody who's working in the lab experimenting on that virus, maybe they can catch that disease. If it's a biosafety level 2, you will see that it is associated mostly with humans. It is a moderate hazard. Okay, for example, if you look at certain diseases like your HIV virus, your equine encephalitis, the kind of disease that you see in horses and all that, it might spread, but even if it spread, it will not spread so fastly between people. Biosafety level 3, when you're working with these diseases or when you're working with these viruses, you have to be careful. Why? Because it may cause serious or very lethal infections. Some of the examples are yellow fever, West Nile disease, St. Louis encephalitis, and so on. Now comes biosafety level 4. These are extremely dangerous. Why is it extremely dangerous? It's not that you will die a very bad death because of this. That is not why it's called extremely dangerous. It's called extremely dangerous because it will spread like wildfire. From one person to another, it will spread so quickly, it will become very difficult to control it. And before we look at it, it will be like a pandemic. So if you look at it, these are extremely dangerous. It poses a high risk of life-threatening diseases, and you have Ebola virus, you have your Lassa virus, any agent with unknown risks of pathogenicity, especially this Langia virus. We just know it started from China. We don't know much information about it. We don't know at what speed it will spread. You don't know also what animals it will occur in. So you're still starting to know about it. So any agent with an unknown risk of pathogenicity. Pathogenicity means what? How fast or how dangerous it is, and transmission, how fastly it can transmit. Any disease that belongs to this category will be a biosafety level 4. Now, let me just ask you a question. Was corona belong? Which category do you think corona is in? Four. When corona initially came, everyone took it very lightly. So what happened is, after a point, or after because we were not concerned, okay, this is a disease which is there in animals. So at that point they categorized it at biosafety level 3, which is there, that okay, it might be dangerous. After a point, when we started understanding it is spreading very fast and we still do not know the causes of it, then they placed it under biosafety level 4. Okay, so now when you look at it based on how easy or how fast, now if you are getting confused, I know certain terms like pathogenicity. Pathogenicity means how, what you say, for example, you have a virus. Okay, some viruses, for example, the common cold virus which is there, and you have the virus of HIV which is there. Which do you think is more difficult to control? Your common cold virus, you can stop. HIV virus, once it is there, it is there. It is very difficult to stop it because you do not have proper cure for it. So pathogenicity means how, what you say, lethal or how dangerous that virus is. Transmission means how fast that virus can move. Okay, common cold virus can move fastly, but is it so dangerous? Is it so dangerous because you have the cure for it? So again, transmission, pathogenicity, if you don't know anything about it, then you will, that virus will be placed under biosafety level 4. Are all these terms clear to you? I'm not asking about the concept, I'm asking about the scientific terms that we discussed. Is it clear to all of you? Especially people coming from non-science background, they are the ones I am concerned about at this point, because whenever we take up a science related topic, I want to ensure that they feel comfortable about this. Yes, okay. Now if there's any doubt, we'll take it up at the end. Now, as of now, no licensed drugs or vaccines are there which can be given for Langia virus. So then again, we are looking, if it starts spreading, we are looking at a very difficult scenario. So the only way to control right now is from the source itself, you try stopping the transmission, you try finding out what is causing the disease, and you try eliminating it from there. Now coming into the next one, which is your lumpy skin disease. Lumpy skin disease is an infectious, eruptive, occasionally fatal disease. Infectious, you understand, it can move or it can infect things. Eruptive means you have certain diseases, once it enters into the body, or what that virus enters into the body, it will immediately start showing the symptoms. For example, coronavirus, we all remember, even if you get the virus within a span of maybe 14 days or something only, you will start showing the symptoms. Lumpy skin disease is not like that. Once you get the disease, next day onwards, you will start seeing the symptoms of it. So it's eruptive, infectious, Occasionally fatal means sometimes it will lead to the death of the whatever organism that is there. And it is characterized by nodules on the skin and other parts of the body. Just like, for example, on the skin, you will have all these huge lump. That is why it's called lumpy skin. Lump means, you have these boils, not like your pimples, but then bigger ones on all your this thing on the body of these organisms. And that is why, and that is the characteristic symptom of the lumpy skin disease. It is an emerging threat to livestock worldwide, meaning this is a disease that is infecting cattle, water buffalo through vectors such as blood feeding insects. Okay, it's primarily affecting your buffaloes, your cows, your cattle, which is there. And how is it getting infected? You have all these small insects which will be on the skin of these cows and cattle. They are the ones which are carrying the virus. Vector means what? Something that carries the virus, okay, carries the organism to them. So this is carrying the organism and infecting the cattle like this, leading to them catching the disease. This is caused by a virus called as the Capripox virus. Just like we had the Henipa virus, which is a huge family, here this is caused by the virus which is called as the Capripox virus. Now, some other information about it is this disease, thankfully, is not zoonotic. What does that mean? It means it is not spreading from animals to humans. It's just causing death and fatality and everything to the animals. Again, that is of concern to us because there are a lot of farmers who are dependent on these cattle. So if you look at Rajasthan and Gujarat, where this disease has started out right now, this is mostly farming communities which you have over there. So what happens is they will start suffering. So the disease is not zoonotic, meaning it does not spread from animals to humans, and humans cannot get infected with it. Once an animal has caught the disease and has recovered from it, it is well protected, means it has some kind of immunity which is there. So all you have to take care of is when any cattle is infected, you try attaining or you try getting the proper vaccines for it. Right now, there is something called as an attenuated virus vaccine for this. What is an attenuated virus vaccine? See guys, whenever you create any vaccine which is there, what is the vaccine? What is basically the idea of a vaccine? You are injecting something and you are making your body recognize, okay, this virus is there. And if that virus is going to come, we have to prevent or protect the body in that manner. So conventionally, vaccines have been created from some component of the virus that is causing the disease. For example, if you have coronavirus and you have a you have a COVID vaccine for it, the primary component of the COVID vaccine will be some part of the coronavirus. So when you put it inside your body, the body is like, okay, what is this? Coronavirus. Okay, it will not give a name and all that. It will be like, okay, this virus is there. So the body will be like, okay, fine, I'm going to have enough of protection against it. Body will function properly. This is why when you have a vaccine on that day, you feel like feverish or you feel drowsy. It's because your body is trying to protect against this. Now, after some time, you are actually exposed to coronavirus and the coronavirus enters your body. At this point, body is like, I know who this is. I am going to get it done. And because you've taken the vaccine, you are protected against it. Now, vaccines can be created by different methods. You can use a live virus. But when you use a live virus, you cannot put that virus in that full energy form of it, right? For example, lumpy skin disease is there. It's caused by a virus. Now, in the vaccine, if you're putting the actual full-fledged virus with all its pathogenicity means all that ability to infect, if you're putting that in the vaccine, your body will first get infected by the lumpy skin disease, right? Not your body, the cattle's body. So now there is something called as attenuated vaccine. Attenuated means here what happens is you are not going to use the live virus in its full form. You might take the DNA or something of it and you will somehow make a change. DNA or RNA or whatever genetic material is there in the virus, you will make a change to it so that once it enters the animal's body, it will not go and cause the disease. The virus will be like, okay, I cannot spread or anything. I will just get inside the body, and that will be there in the vaccine. Is the concept of attenuated vaccine clear to all of you? Okay, I am seeing a lot of responses, yes, but then I know maybe there are people who will not have understood it. I will be taking it up at the end again, okay? Because I can understand there are a lot of terms which might be confusing. We will be taking it up at the end again. Don't worry, guys. And even if I do forget, I want you guys to remind me, okay? Please tell us what attenuated virus is again. You can tell it to me at the end, okay? Right now, the reason why I'm discussing this again is from a prelims point of view. This lumpy skin disease was now, or when it came in Rajasthan and Gujarat, and this Langya virus, which is there, this was first proclaimed to the world by this organization called as Gavi. Gavi is what? Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. They are the ones that have proclaimed this. Okay. So again, from a UPSC point of view, it serves us to know that this was created in 2000. It is an international organization which is basically trying to save the lives of the people through somehow creating better vaccines, trying to encourage the use of vaccines, and somehow trying to reach it out to all the people. So from a UPSC prelims point of view, I felt this could be important for you. So they have researchers from all countries, India included. Okay. So with this, we are reaching to an end of that topic, which is there. Now, very quickly, let's do this question and move on to the last topic. With reference to the lumpy skin disease recently in the news, consider the following statements. LSD, the LSD is basically short form for lumpy skin disease. LSD is caused by a virus called as the Capripox virus. LSD infects cattle and water buffalo and is genetically related to the goat pox and sheep pox virus family, which is there. Again, this question becomes a bit difficult, but I want you to use your common sense over here. I really want you to use your common sense and try solving this question. LSD is a highly fatal zoonotic disease that can spread directly from animals to humans. There are two methods in which you can solve this question. I hope you will use your common sense and solve this. I'm going to launch the poll right now. Yes, you guys can start marking the answer now. No, Akshit. No, it is not. Those who are having doubt about attenuated, we will be taking it up at the end. Okay. Sintrapa has asked, if the milk of the cattle with the lumpy skin disease is consumed, then will it be dangerous to humans? As of now, researchers prove that if the milk is properly pasteurized and boiled to a certain level, it should not be a problem for humans. So that is the current level of research that is there, and they are saying it is not going to be harmful if the necessary precautions are taken. Again, let's see. 52% of you have marked the correct answer. So I'm going to give even if you've not marked any answer wrong before also, here if you have marked the right answer, good job, guys, because this requires you to think a little bit over here. Okay, now what is the part that you have to think? LSD is caused by a virus called as a Capripox. That is correct. That we all know. So that is correct. Now look at all the statements. How many statements are there which has 1 in it? Only A and B, which means you can eliminate this and eliminate this. Now coming into the second one. LSD infects cattle and water buffalo and is genetically related to the goat pox and sheep pox virus family. We are talking about cattle over here. So don't you think on a common sense basis, this could be related to, they're not even saying it is similar to, they're saying genetically related to the goat pox and sheep pox family, which is there. Even if you do not know what the goat pox and sheep pox family is, you know this is some kind of a cattle pox which is there. So using your common sense, this statement is also correct. And the third statement is obviously wrong. You don't even have to find it, because when you eliminate C and D, you will see that third statement is wrong. Okay, so the answer to this question is B, 1 and 2. So even if you've made other questions wrong, but you've got this correct, give a pat on your back. Good job, guys. Coming to the last topic of the day, small satellite launch vehicle. Very recently, the ISRO has launched a new compact satellite system called as Small Satellite Launch Vehicle. What do you understand from the word small satellite launch vehicle? You are basically having some kind of a vehicle to launch your small satellites which are there. Okay, now this was initially, in the first time that we tried it, we have sent it out and we were hoping for good results, but unfortunately this mission has not gone on to go according to the plan. So the mission was a failure. But nevertheless, the small satellite launch vehicle becomes important to us, because until now, if you look at ISRO, you all have heard about the PSLV, the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Yes, India has had the most efficient launch vehicle in the form of PSLV. Launch vehicle, let's start from the crux. What is a launch vehicle? See, when you have a bus, the bus is a vehicle. You have things, or you have people and goods and everything transported in it. So similarly, even for rockets and even for spaceships, you will have a launch vehicle, and on that launch vehicle, you will have different things like satellites, different payloads. What are payloads? It might be some experiment or something which is put onto it. Payload means weight. Okay, so the rocket or any of these launch vehicles will go into the outer space carrying all these different things. So a small satellite launch vehicle is basically a launch vehicle which carries a small satellite. A PSLV, which is a Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, is the kind of a launch vehicle which will take a polar satellite into the space. What is a polar satellite? A polar satellite, it is a very specific type of satellite which will put the whatever satellite it is taking into the polar orbits of the Earth. What are the polar orbits? You know, you have a North Pole and you have a South Pole. You have an orbit. What is an orbit? If you have some Earth over here, the path on which the satellite moves is the orbit. If you have an orbit which is from the one pole to the other pole, that is called as a polar orbit. Is this clear to all of you? The polar orbit concept? Yes. Okay. Now, coming to this point over here, the reason why we discussed PSLV in the beginning itself is because now India's PSLV has been used to launch a lot of satellites. Every other country, if they want to launch it in a very cheap manner, they'll be like, okay, let us send it along with PSLV. So ISRO started feeling, hey, why can we not make this as a business? We can make this very commercial, no? If any country, any developing country wants to send a satellite, you need, or you can send it via PSLV. Now, PSLV for the same reason has been called as the workhorse of ISRO. What is workhorse? The kind of thing which is very hardworking. It will do everything. It is taking satellite, launching, successful, coming back, taking satellite, launching. It is a workhorse of ISRO. But then ISRO felt that if we are planning to make it commercial, all these developing countries will have only small satellites. We need to have a separate set of vehicles which will launch these small satellites alone into the space. And that is why the small satellite launch vehicle came into place. This was the first flight, and it had carried two things. It had carried two satellites. One is an Earth observation micro satellite called as EOS-02 and ASADI-SAT. You don't have to go into the details of these. UPSC does not go into the details of the payloads. Okay, you just have to know what SSLV is, or your small satellite launch vehicle is, because if we went into the details of all the satellites, we would be sitting with almost 1,500 satellites over the time that we have sent and we have seen and everything. So you cannot study all the details. Now coming into some important details about SSLV. SSLV is a three-stage all solid vehicle. Don't panic. What is this three-stage all solid? Okay. Now, when you have any satellite or any rocket which is there, or not satellite, any launch vehicle which is there, what happens is, you must have seen the pictures or you must have seen the video of how the rocket gets launched, right? The rocket starts, so much of fire happens. After a certain point, see, the rocket is not like we initially fire it and all the way the rocket will go in a very nice manner. The rocket is quite heavy. So at every other stage, every other point, when it wants to increase its speed a little bit, it will give apart something or it will throw apart something. So for example, if this is your rocket and this is your rocket which is going, rocket will start from here, go at a certain height. After a point, one stage of the rocket it will give away, then it will go further again. Now if it is having three stages, and you will have a payload at the front or you will have a body at the front, so all these three stages will be left out when the rocket wants to go beyond the space or go beyond the atmosphere. Is this clear? What is these three stages? Is it clear to all of you? Yes. So basically, if I had to show you, if this is your rocket and the front part, you will have one stage like this, you will have another stage like this, you will have another stage like this. And each of these stages, there will be fuel also. So initially, the rocket will be burning and it will start off. After you reach a certain point, this part's fuel will start burning and this part will be given out. If you look at the rocket launch videos which are there, you will see that after a point, that part will go out. Little bit more it will go. This part's fuel will burn, that will go out. Then this will go out. Why is it being going on shedding it? It's because when you initially start, you cannot burn all the fuel. See, you must have seen these car races, no? Do you see all of them? The fact that, okay, when a car race starts, you see in the initially what they will not be taking that so much of speed. They initially thrust a little bit. After a point, they'll maintain a constant speed. Again, when they want to thrust a bit, they will put their little bit more speed. This is how you can finally reach. All through the time, you cannot constantly burn the fuel. By the time you need to reach the finishing line, you will be like out of energy. So here again, the rocket also does the same thing. It will shed out these stages. And finally, once it has to, because the most difficult part is to cross the Earth's atmosphere. Why is it so difficult to cross the Earth's atmosphere? See, what happens is when you're trying to cross the Earth's atmosphere, you're passing through all these layers of air. So what happens is when you're trying to cross it, constantly there will be something that pulls you back. You have your gravity that pulls you back. You will have something called as an atmosphere drag. Drag means the atmosphere is dragging you back into the earth. Okay, so you want to cross it and go apart. So you need so much of energy. And once you get that energy, you are out. You can move out from the atmosphere. So SSLV is a three-stage all solid vehicle, meaning all the fuel that is there, these are all solid vehicles which are there, solid fuels which are there. You have liquid fuel, you have liquid hydrogen, you have liquid nitrogen. Similarly, you can solidify those things and you can use it into each of these stages. These are all solid fuels. It is indigenously developed, meaning it is totally developed by India itself. It is designed to carry smaller commercial satellites into low Earth orbit. Now the question comes, what is a low Earth orbit? A low Earth orbit is that small orbit. For example, if you have the Earth's surface like this, there are orbits which are quite close to the Earth. Then you have orbits which are a little bit more far. Then you have orbits which are further away. Your low Earth orbits are those orbits which are in the range of almost 90 kilometer to 200 kilometer from the Earth's surface. Which means if you have your Earth's surface over here, the orbit which starts from a 90 kilometer from the Earth's surface, from there, Earth's surface, when I'm saying after the atmosphere has crossed, okay, not in the atmosphere. The atmosphere has been crossed, and from there, when you look at it, 90 kilometer, from 90 till 200 kilometer from the surface, if you look, these are all low Earth orbits. So if I'm launching a satellite into 150 kilometer above the Earth's surface, that is in the low Earth orbit. Beyond the 200 kilometer, you will have the middle Earth orbit. Okay. Now the high Earth orbit is at a distance from the Earth's surface. It is a 36,000 kilometer away from the Earth's surface. All this you will be studying a lot of it in your science and technology classes also. Just for you to understand this very concept, I have given you a brief. Okay. Is this clear to all of you? These different orbits which are there? Good question, Dilip. Dilip has asked, why are small satellites launched in low Earth orbits? In the first place, most of these small satellites which are there, they are very experimental satellites. Okay. To launch something into high Earth orbit, you require, because you have to travel much more, it is normally being used for satellites which have not single experimental purposes. Okay. So if you have a communication satellite, it will probably be launched into a very high Earth orbit which is there. But general experimental satellites which have very limited functions, you prefer it into the low Earth orbit. One, it is cheap to launch into those low Earth orbits. Your chances of reaching over there and collecting proper data is also good over there. And it is mostly the amount of fuel and the amount of vehicle cost and all is less. So just for minor 1 or 2 experiment related satellites, they prefer the low Earth orbit. Is that clear? So here now what happens is, in this case, this satellite or SSLV, this is taken it a step further. Conventionally, when we say 90 to 200 kilometer, this is the maximum that is being possible. Or in India also, whenever we say we want to launch it into the low Earth orbit, we have launched it up to the 200 kilometers. SSLV, even there, ISRO has tried its expertise, and it has tried that, okay, in the worst case, if we want to ever launch something into even 500 kilometer, we can do it. So SSLV is designed to launch things up to, the weight of satellite can be almost 500 kilogram, and it can go up to 500 kilometer into the low Earth orbit which is there. That is the maximum. It's not that all the other satellites will be going into the 500. ISRO has designed it in such a way that it can go up till there. Okay. Now, one more thing I want you to understand is, when you look at sites of NASA, they would have given you clearly middle Earth orbit, low Earth orbit, high Earth orbit. Some places they do not consider the middle Earth orbit which is there. They just consider the low Earth orbit and high Earth orbit. So when you read certain news articles and you see that mention, just understand that here they might have just considered the low Earth orbit and high Earth orbit. Is that clear? Now, what is the significance of SSLV? The significance of SSLV is the fact that we are trying to now have a space innovation which will be related to the private sector, because you're trying to commercialize it. Okay, so this will actually be a good thing for that reason. It will fulfill the mandate of NSIL. Very recently, India has ventured into, you must be knowing all this Elon Musk and SpaceX and all is happening in the world, where you are trying to commercialize space related activities. So right now, the New Space India Limited, this is basically an organization which India has created to explore how much we can also use the commercial part of space research which is there. So now, when you are doing SSLV, you are basically fulfilling the mandate. Mandate means the objective of NSIL also. No more piggyback rides. What is piggyback rides? Piggyback rides basically means that normally what would happen is, you must have also seen this. So someone is going to from your home, your father is going to the market or somewhere. Already there is one elder child also sitting behind. Now there will be someone who's like, okay, fine, the smaller one will also be there. You also go along with them. It's all right. You carry along with them. Anyway, the scooter is going. So if you want to go, you can also go along with them. Piggyback ride means you are just going along with a major vehicle which is there. Earlier, when PSLV used to be launched, everybody will be like, okay, anyway, PSLV is going. Can we also put our small satellite along with this? Now that is not possible. Now from now onwards, to launch the small satellites, we have a specific small satellite launch vehicle itself. The other advantages is there is a drastic reduction of turnaround time. What is turnaround time? Turnaround time means, see, the launch vehicle will go to space, place the rocket over there, and then not place the satellite over there, not the rocket, place the satellite over there, and it will come back. It will go and come back. So there is a turnaround time over here. Now, turnaround means what? You go and you come back. So earlier, when you had your PSLV and you had all these different satellites to be placed, the turnaround time was large because PSLV will go place one satellite in one orbit, place another one in another orbit. By the time the PSLV comes back, there's a huge turnaround time. Here, the turnaround time is less. Multiple satellites can be accommodated. Why? Because multiple satellites, because it's a small satellite launch vehicle, right? So at a time itself, you can have at least 15 to 20 satellites carried to the space. Least amount of launch infrastructure. Because see, when you have your, we just talked about PSLV, there is a bigger one, GSLV. GSLV, when it is happening, it is launching into the higher orbits which are there. For all PSLV and GSLV, the initial launch things which are there is very, you need a lot more equipments. Why? Because you are launching it into maybe higher orbits which are there. In the case of small satellite launch vehicle, the infrastructure needs means what all you need to start the launch is quite less. So again, because of all this, everyone prefers SSLV, but unfortunately, the mission that was currently there, it did not go right. Why did it not go right? Again, the first thing, it's the first mission. But what happened is, see, when this, I'll tell you in a very brief manner, what happened is, this rocket, it was taking the satellites out there, and a sensor which is there in a satellite. Okay, you have certain machines which are there in satellite. There is something called as a sensor. A sensor in this satellite will determine, okay, how much more distance this rocket has to go, or the launch vehicle has to go. So the sensor malfunctioned. It stopped working in a proper manner. And then what happened? So ideally, this is where it launched from. It had to go into this orbit, which is here. But when the sensor stopped working, the launch vehicle had to place it into some orbit, which was over here. But unfortunately, that orbit happened to be an elliptical orbit. What is an elliptical orbit? An elliptical orbit is this kind. If the orbit shape is something like this, ellipse. You have an ellipse and you have a circle. This is an ellipse. This elliptical orbit which was there, it was only 76 kilometers from the Earth's surface. Which means what? As I told you, your ideal orbit starts from 90 kilometer onwards. When it's 76 kilometer, it is very close to the Earth's atmosphere also. What started happening is, when it was placed in this orbit, the Earth's atmosphere started having that kind of a pull on it. And very soon, these satellites started tumbling, or that entire launch vehicle started tumbling back into the Earth. And obviously it got distracted. Okay, so this is what happened, what went wrong with the mission. But then again, let's all be hopeful. The next time we will not be having something like this. Let's be very hopeful about it. Before we go into the question, look at this picture which is over there, and it is quite alarming, because look at all the different things which are there. You have almost 3,790 satellites in the low Earth orbit. You have 139 satellites in the medium Earth orbit, or the middle Earth orbit, which is there. You have almost 565 satellites in the geosynchronous orbit, which is there, even beyond that. In total, if you look, the Earth has almost 4,550 satellites orbiting around it. What is the first thought that comes to your mind when you hear this? space junk. I'm so happy that some of you have hit the point rightly. The thing is that when you put all these satellites, you are just concerned, yeah, satellite has gone, good. After 2 or 3 years of functioning, what happens to the satellite? The satellite lies around there, malfunction. It will not function in a proper manner. That satellite will go and hit other space junk, which is there. Junk means rubbish. Will go create a hit over there, and it will be creating small pieces. That small pieces will go and hit something else over there. Means we are looking at a scenario where we are now polluting the space also. So again, this is the concern related to all these orbits and all these launch vehicles. With that, let's go into the final question of the day, after which you can all see the leaderboard which is there. With reference to the small satellite launch vehicle recently in the news, consider the following statements. It is a multi-stage launch vehicle developed indigenously by the Indian Space Research Organization. It is also known as the workhorse of ISRO and has successfully launched India's Chandrayaan-2 mission, which traveled to the moon. Think about it, guys. I'm launching the poll right now. Just give me a minute. Yes, start marking your answers. Akshit, yes, that is also wastage. It mostly goes and burns out and it falls into oceans mostly. So yes, that is also wastage. That is also polluted. Guys, read the question properly. What does all this multi-stage and all mean? Think about it. Don't mark wrong answers. Think and write. Yes, you have. I have almost 65% of you marking the right answer. How come almost a very large number of you mark B, which is there? What is the meaning of multi-stage? Multi-stage means if it is having one stage, it is single stage. If it is having two stage, it is dual stage or two stage, which is there. If it's having more than two, you will call it at some point, you will start calling it multi-stage, right? So this is actually a three-stage vehicle, which is there. So it is a multi-stage. This is why I said, guys, see, oh God, I forgot to show the leaderboard. Will you please, guys, forgive me for this? Because I had to see the question. Is it fine? Those who have scored it well, right? Okay, no problems. I have all my comforting students who've told me no problem. Thank you guys over there. So again, here it is a multi-stage launch vehicle, means it is just, in this case, it is right by, it is a three-stage thing. So anything which has more than one stage, you can call it multi-stage. Okay, so multi-stage launch vehicle developed by this thing indigenously, ISRO, that is correct. Workhorse, no, it is PSLV. So I'm guessing those who wrote it, that would be those who got it wrong would have got confused with the multi-stage. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So in that case, we are done with this. Now coming to, so we've successfully completed all the 5 topics, and now I'm up for questions. First thing I'll explain is the attenuated virus vaccine. Don't worry about it. Okay, we are going to explain attenuated. See, first of all, understand the word attenuated means weakened. Weakened. Okay, which means you have a virus. For example, if this is a virus, the virus is able to spread so fast, not because the virus had boost in the morning. It's because the virus has certain genetic material in it which makes it capable of spreading very fast. This virus which is there, it is becoming too very fast, it's reproducing very fast. That is how the virus replicates. Understand? Now, if you're putting that virus which is in that same situation into a vaccine and injecting it into the body, This virus, once it enters into our body, they will also start being like, yeah, we are replicating, we are reproducing, and we will, before even the vaccine is starting to act, you will catch that disease with which that vaccine was made about. Why? Every vaccine which is there is having some kind or some component of that virus or whatever organism that causes that disease. So if you put a live virus in its full active form, it will lead you to having that disease. So instead of that, you weaken the virus. How will you weaken the virus? For example, in the genetic material of that virus, there will be some part which is helping it to reproduce very fastly. What you do is you somehow take that part away from the genetic material, or you don't take that part away, you do something that will try to silence that part. All this you will study extensively in biotechnology. I hope all that will be taught to you in much detail, but right now you understand, in that genetic material something can be used to silence it in the sense that that part of that genetic material which helps the virus to spread very very quickly, it will not be expressed. So, for example, if in my genetic material, black hair is there, it's in my genetic material, it is there, okay, I would have black hair. Now, before I was born or something, if there was a correction made in my genetic material while I was, in the fetal stage, and in that black hair code, they are somehow silencing it and they're putting something else over there. They're putting brown hair. This can all be done, guys, by the way, guys, okay? All be done by biotechnology scientists. So you're putting brown hair, which means what? When I am born, I will have brown hair. Both my parents will be having black hair, but I will be having brown hair. This can be changed. Similarly, for the virus, that quality which makes it reproduce very fast, they will either silence it or they will replace it with something which makes it in a very weak situation. Then they will take that virus and put it into the vaccine, and then they will use it as a vaccine, thus making it a weakened virus vaccine, attenuated vaccine. Is that clear to all of you now? Perfect. Those who felt there was some issue, is it clear? Because I don't want anybody to go away from this session thinking, oh no, that was not clear for me. Why didn't she explain that in a proper manner? Okay, so I hope this is all clear. Those who are asking me for the leaderboard, guys, I told you what happened. Honest mistake. I forgot to press it at the end. I am very sorry. Next time I will make sure I show you the leaderboard. So please forgive me for this. Okay. Any other doubts that we have at this point? Because I know it's late, but I appreciate all of you staying back till the last topic and being very, very good students over here. Nandita has asked, ma'am, what are the implications of space pollution? The implication of space pollution is the fact that these satellites which we are launching at this point are very important for our communication, remote sensing, all these activities. If space is getting polluted a lot, what would happen is even the new satellites that we are launching is at a risk. You have all this junk going and hitting it. That is one of the major risks. Second thing is that, see, even if the satellites are there, if there should be proper transmission, you cannot have all these obstacles placed. So again, when space is polluted, that will also lead to the functioning or not proper functioning of satellites. And on the whole, when you have so much junk that is there out in the space, it will lead to us, for example, there's a lot of other space research happening, right? You have all these telescopes, you have all these things which are observing. This will all be a problem. This will all try to somehow impede, or some kind of effect will be there on any other kind of space research which is happening. Apart from that, the energy, the dust, the junk that is created in total affects the entire earth. Some of it falls back, some of it goes and hits. So all this creates a very unwanted environment that affects with our atmosphere also. Okay, is that all clear, Nandita? Okay, yeah, 1 minute. Let me just try. Utpal, compulsory voting is not there right now. See, the topic was if compulsory voting should be there, should not be there. So right now it is not any right which is there. Compulsory voting has not happened. Okay. Musba has asked, can we not reuse this junk satellite? Musba, very good question. Very recently, ISRO has come up with something called as the POEM platform. I think I only have taught this to you in one of our previous sessions, which are there. You can find the recorded videos also of this. We have devised a way to somehow use the space junk and try to utilize it in a good manner. So we have something called as a POEM platform for using it. So Musba, that's your answer over there. Um, the last question and the explanation. Kajal, see, it's a very simple thing. The thing is that SSLV is a three-stage rocket, three-stage launch vehicle. If you have something which is having just one stage, you call it what? A single stage rocket. Anything which is having multi means what? Many stages. You have one and you have many. So if it is having more than one stage, it will be called as a multi-stage thing, right? Multi-starer cinema. Multi-starer cinema means what? You have several stars or you have several major actors starring in that cinema. You don't have just one major star in it. Understand? So one is the normal term that we say single stage. Anything beyond one, it is a multi-stage launch. Is it clear, Kajal? Veena, constitutional rights are not, all the constitutional rights are not fundamental, because in our constitution specifically, when you study polity, you will see there are specific set of rights which are called as fundamental rights itself. Only those rights are the ones which can be enforced in a court of law, and you can, for example, you have certain measures also for it. So when you study polity, you will see that some rights are a little bit more important than the others. If you make every other right fundamental, that importance given to certain rights will be lost. And this was the logic of the constitution makers. Okay, Veena? Second point, Kajal, workhorse of ISRO is PSLV, right? It is not SSLV. Okay. Veena, coronavirus again is a biosafety level 4 at this point. If the government wants to store our data in data centers within country during war cyber, can see, Karthik, the idea is, if government wants to store, the government also should be brought under data protection, which is there. And the implicit idea is, when you have the government storing the data, they will do it with extra protection because it is the Indian citizens' data. When you go to Singapore and you're storing your data over there, you will have Indian citizens' data, you will have Dubai citizens' data, you will have some other country's citizens' data. They are not attached to it in any way that, okay, we have to protect the Indian citizens' data itself in a good manner. So the idea of the government is, if you're placing the data in your own country, it will have a little bit more better protection, or at least they can give a better protection, is the idea. Is that clear, Karthik? Devyani, if you're giving in 2025, I would say that those who are giving attempts in the coming years, it is always better that you start taking up your current affair notes. If you're giving the attempt in 2024 or 2025, you can start a little bit of your current affair preparation from now onwards. You see, always the idea is UPSC tends to ask from, we say it is 18 months, but then you will see that UPSC can ask from even beyond that. So since you are anyway attending the webinars, make short notes of it. Okay, Devyani? So I think now the questions which are coming is again all about the compulsory voting being a legal right. See, the compulsory voting is not a right at this point. The compulsory voting is a suggestion that was being put forward. Okay. So I hope since it's late also. I've kept you all here so long, but then I hope you all had an informative session, especially since we dealt with science-based topics. I hope all the students who are from non-science background also are able to follow it in a proper manner. I hope you all had a very informative session. Until I meet you all again next time, take care, guys, and happy learning.